Chapter 20. The reason why Immortal used his psychokinesis to warn the woman. Firstly, it was to warn the woman. You can pretend to be me but don't ruin my reputation. Secondly, it was to test his psychokinesis. Ever since he had psychokinesis, Immortal had always been alone. There was no other reference. Today he finally had a reference. Naturally, he had to test how strong his psychokinesis was. However, when he tried, it was lonely. Immortal felt that using psychokinesis to suppress this woman was as easy as suppressing an ordinary person. Naturally, he couldn't test how strong his psychokinesis was. Moreover, his psychokinesis couldn't suppress the woman to the point where she couldn't move at all. But perhaps the woman was terrified to the extreme. He only used his psychokinesis to casually suppress her. That woman couldn't even take a step forward. Sigh. He shook his head. He sighed gloomily. Being invincible was really lonely. Seeing Immortal sigh, Audi patted him on the shoulder. Don't be discouraged. Maybe the next time you get an injection, you can also become a psychokinesis. When the time comes, you have to learn from the mysterious powerhouse. Immortal smiled as if he was joking. Why can't she learn from me? Crippled Audi hurriedly looked around. He advised in a low voice. Little Immo, you can't say such things. If you anger that mysterious powerhouse, you'll be in big trouble. Half an hour later, everyone slowly dispersed while discussing the mysterious powerhouse. Immortal, Audi, and Happy also returned to the corpse farm. At the same time in the base chief's office. The base chief said to Miss Ponytail, "You acted well just now." Miss Ponytail shook her head. She said, "Chief, I don't want to act anymore." The chief obviously didn't expect this. Didn't we agree before? You have to act until the mysterious powerhouse is forced out. Miss Ponytail shook her head and asked, "Chief, why do you have to force him out?" The chief laughed bitterly. As the chief, I have to consider everything from the chief's perspective. That mysterious powerhouse has such powerful strength, but he hasn't shown himself. It's a potential threat to the entire base. So I have to force him out and talk to him. I have to make sure he means no harm. Miss Ponytail shook her head. If he didn't have any ill intentions, wouldn't our actions have angered him? If he had any ill intentions, he would have done it long ago. There's no need to hide in the base for 5 years. The bureau chief laughed bitterly again. What you said is all speculation. As the chief of the base, I want to see the truth. After that, the base chief seemed to be a little tired. He leaned back in his chair and said slowly, "I'm responsible for the safety of 100,000 people in the base." Sister Ponytail felt a little heartache when she saw this. He said, "Uncle, I understand." But then he shook his head. "But I can't continue acting." "Why?" The base chief frowned slightly. The Ponytail girl said, "Just now, the mysterious expert warned me." Hearing this, the base chief immediately leaned forward. He was pleasantly surprised. "You saw him?" The Ponytail girl shook her head and said, "I can sense that he was at the training ground at that time." "He didn't appear. But at that time, I was already more than 300 meters away from the training ground, but he used his psychokinesis to suppress me so that I couldn't move at all. My psychokinesis is nothing compared to his." The base chief was surprised. In that case, the range of his psychokinesis is at least 300 meters in radius. In other words, he's a level 3 psychokinesis. The Ponytail girl nodded, then shook her head. "I'm sure that it's far more than 300 meters. He must be in existence that far surpasses level 3 psychokinesis." The base chief was even more surprised when he heard this. According to the data analysis in the laboratory, after being injected with the enhancer, some people's bodies would be strengthened and become zombie hunters. Very few people's brains would be strengthened and become psychokinesis. But it was impossible for someone to be both a zombie hunter and a psychokinesis. But from the mysterious expert's performance, he obviously did it. He was both a zombie hunter and a psychokinesis. This made the base chief fall into deep thought. How on earth did he do it? If the mysterious expert shared his method with everyone, would there be others who could become both a zombie hunter and a psychokinesis like him? Thinking of this, he raised his head. He said seriously, "You have to keep up the act." "Uncle, The Ponytail girl still wanted to say something, but the base chief waved his hand and interrupted her. "We have to force him out. I have to have a good talk with him. On behalf of 100,000 people in the base, I beg you." The base chief said solemnly. The Ponytail girl opened her mouth. In the end, she couldn't refuse. "Then, okay. But if the mysterious expert really shows up, please help me explain it clearly." The base chief smiled again. He said, "Of course. Xiaowei, are you still worried about your uncle?" So in the following days, the ponytail girl frequently went to various occasions as the mysterious expert. She became the star of the entire base. Most of the people in the base worshipped her. Wherever she went, there would be cheers and applause. She would occasionally show her strength. This made those people even more crazy. Immortal didn't care. Ever since he gave the ponytail girl a small warning that day, he didn't make a move again. Since this woman wanted to act, then let her act. And with her as a shield, the people in the base would no longer guess who the mysterious expert was. This was a good thing for him. Then the days returned to normal. Immortal still signed in, raised pigs and fed zombies every day. Happy was a newbie, so she was always not very nimble when doing work. The base chief asked Immortal to take care of Happy. Immortal often went to help her. She would always smile gratefully for Immortal's help. Looking at her bright and innocent smile, Immortal often felt that it was a pity. Such a smiling girl actually didn't know how to speak. As for the base, after the martial arts competition, a second round of injections was carried out. No one in the zombie farm became a psychokinesis again. This made the base chief feel disappointed for a long time. And in the entire base, this round of injections produced 13 psychokinesis. Now there were more than 3,000 zombie hunters in the base and 13 psychokinesis. Could be said that they had a strong army. So the base chief ordered these zombie hunters and psychokinesis to clean up the zombies around the base. With the cooperation of the powerful zombie hunters and psychokinesis, this team of more than 3,000 people could be said to be invincible. Just like this, time passed. In the blink of an eye, another 5 years had passed. Through these 5 years of continuous strengthening, Immortal's telekinesis could reach a range of 500 meters. He could control objects within 50 kilograms. According to the base's classification of psychokinesis, he had already reached level 5 psychokinesis. Chapter 21. 5 years. The first level 7 zombie hunter had appeared in the base. At the same time, the base laboratory conducted a lot of research on psychokinesis. They divided psychokinesis into levels according to the range of telekinesis. Every 100 meters increase in telekinesis range was considered a level increase. The strongest psychokinesis in the base was that Miss Ponytail. Her telekinesis could already spread out more than 200 meters. That was level 2 psychokinesis. More than 3,000 zombie hunters in the base formed a zombie hunter group. Miss Ponytail became the group leader as everyone expected. And ever since she was warned by Immortal, she didn't do anything out of line. Instead, she worked hard to be a good group leader. As for Immortal, through the continuous injection of cell enhancers for the past 5 years, his telekinesis had reached a radius of 500 meters. He could control objects under 50 kilograms. Obviously, he was already level 5 psychokinesis. He was both the ceiling of the zombie hunters and the number 1 in psychokinesis. This feeling made Immortal very happy. However, Immortal vaguely felt that his body had been strengthened to the peak after 5 years. Recently, he always felt that he could break through at any time. This made him quite happy. On this day, after Immortal finished feeding the zombies, he strolled out of the zombie farm again. When he passed by the laboratory, he said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system, like a girlfriend in love, replied instantly, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, laboratory. Sign in reward, X2 virus. Immortal was slightly puzzled. He had never signed in the X2 virus before. What was the use of this thing? With a thought, he checked the system backpack. He saw that in the system backpack there was already a gun-type syringe. On the syringe there was a small transparent test tube-like bottle. In the small bottle there was a blood-red liquid. X2 virus, a mutated strain of virus X. After injection, it can strengthen the host cells and help the host break through their limits. Hearing this, Immortal was ecstatic. He was finally going to break through. 7 years ago, he had already become a level 10 zombie hunter. Now, after 7 years, the other zombie hunters were about to catch up. This made him a little depressed. And now he was finally about to break through again. He quickly returned to the corpse farm. He locked himself in his room. Then he took out a syringe. Although it wasn't the first time he had injected it, this time he was so excited that his arm trembled slightly. He took a few deep breaths. After calming down a little, he injected the blood-red X2 virus into his left arm. Meanwhile, a rare phenomenon appeared in his mind once again. Just like the first injection. A gigantic dragon phantom that was several hundred meters long flapped its gigantic wings as it flew across the sky. However, this time, the dragon's shadow seemed to be more solid than before. Roar! A dragon's roar shook all the beasts. Immortal could feel that the terrifying long way was pressing down on him so much that he didn't even dare to raise his head. The phantom dragon circled twice in the air. In the next moment he suddenly retracted his wings. Like a meteorite, it swooped down towards him. Immortal only felt that the sky seemed to have darkened a lot under the shadow of the giant dragon. The giant dragon's cave-like mouth opened and instantly swallowed Immortal. In the next moment, Immortal suddenly quivered. He opened his eyes. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. His hands and feet were cold. Although it wasn't the first time he had seen such a phenomenon, every time it was as if he had experienced it personally. Gulp. He swallowed his saliva. Immortal smiled bitterly. Did he have to make such a big commotion every time? Could he still break through happily? At this moment he felt that his body was rapidly heating up and gradually becoming hot. Every cell in his body was growing wildly like weeds after a heavy rain. Every blood vessel in his body seemed to be alive. It continued to extend. Every muscle was filled with explosive strength. Every bone in his body was making cracking sounds. Immortal's eyes were filled with excitement. He was about to break through. Sure enough, in just 5 minutes, his entire body had undergone a qualitative change. His slightly thin body actually looked a little sturdy at this moment. He felt that every move of his would carry an incomparably powerful force. He had to carefully adapt to this newly increased strength. Otherwise he would accidentally crush the cup and collapse the chair. At this moment, the system's voice sounded in his mind, frowny face breaking through the limit, unlocking the Titan dragon claw on the left arm. Before he could finish his sentence, his left arm began to change. Just like his right arm before, it became 3 times thicker. It also grew black scales the size of a fingernail. His left hand also turned into a sharp dragon claw. Immortal was delighted. Finally, the dragon claw on his left arm was unlocked. If both arms were dragon claws, how powerful would that be? However, the changes in his body didn't stop. The skin on his right hand quickly protruded. The bones in his hand grew rapidly. When the bones pierced the skin, he was surprised to find that the bones were actually black. It was as if they were made of steel. Moreover, the black bones continued to grow longer. A moment later, it became a 3-meter-long black spear that looked like a javelin. The spear was completely black and emitted a black metallic luster. The tip of the spear was extremely sharp. It seemed to be able to easily pierce through iron and stone. After the black spear was formed, it left his hand bone. It became an independent existence. He could throw the spear out at any time. Immortal held the cold spear, but he felt as if his mind was connected. After all, this was flesh that fell from his body. Bones? System, what is this? The system replied instantly, frowny face, sky-killing dragon spear. After a zombie hunter broke through the limit, he evolved into a hunter. Every hunter can condense a bone spur from their right hand. During battle, the bone spur can be released silently and can pierce through iron and stone. The host has the Titan dragon gene, so what was born was not a bone spur, but a sky-killing dragon spear. Immortal heard this explanation and felt very comfortable. Sky-killing dragon spear, just by hearing this name it was very Shinibu. With a thought, the sky-killing dragon spear began to shrink rapidly and finally merged into his right hand. The next moment his right hand changed again. The skin on his right hand squirmed rapidly, as if something was going to come out. After a while, his right arm slowly extended. It was about 3 meters long. His right hand slowly turned into a sharp axe blade. The axe blade was more than 2 meters wide. A cold light flashed on it, terrifying one's soul. The system appeared at the right time and explained, frowny face, after a zombie hunter breaks through and becomes a hunter, a part of the genes in their body will mutate. Other than the bone spur, they can also evolve into a weapon called a genetic weapon. Different genetic weapons have different powers. Immortal heard this and was overjoyed. It turned out that after breaking through and becoming a hunter, he would obtain such a powerful ability. No wonder it was so difficult to break through and become a hunter. With a thought, his right arm quickly returned to its original state. At this moment, his attributes suddenly appeared in his mind. Name, Immortal. Level 1 hunter, level 5 psychokinesis. Evolution path, Titan dragon. His attributes interface was not as long as the main characters of other novels he read before. It made people feel that it was just a word count. His attributes interface was simple and clear. After a while, after calming down his excitement, Immortal took out a dark green potion from his backpack. Once again he injected it into his left arm. Chapter 22. Immortal had just broken through when he took out another syringe. He injected it into his left arm. This was the Titan Dragon gene enhancer that he had saved up previously. 7 years ago, his body had already reached its limit. Injecting the Titan Dragon gene enhancer was no longer effective. But after he signed in, he would still often receive the Titan Dragon gene enhancer. So he stored these extra enhancers. About 100 days a year, he could sign in the Titan Dragon gene enhancer. In 7 years, he had saved up more than 700 of them. In addition to his personal warehouse, his system backpack was also filled to the brim. Soon this enhancer was injected. He could feel some kind of change in his body. Although this change wasn't as big as before, it still proved that this gene enhancer was still effective. He immediately took out a second syringe. Next, the third, fourth, fifth. More than an hour later, he injected all the more than 50 gene enhancers in his system backpack. Then he made a trip to the warehouse. He moved the gene enhancers back from his personal warehouse. He continued to inject. For more than half a day, Immortal ran back and forth to the warehouse 10 times. Finally, he moved all the gene enhancers back and injected them into his body. After he injected the last gene enhancer, his body once again felt that boiling hot feeling. Immortal was secretly delighted. This was a sign that he was about to level up. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, his body temperature slowly dropped. But the feeling of being full of power in his body slowly rose. At this moment, Immortal's attribute interface appeared in his mind again. Name, Immortal. Level 2 Hunter, Level 5 Psychokinesis. Evolution Path, Titan Dragon. Phew. Immortal let out a long breath. He was a Level 2 Hunter. He was finally a lot ahead of the hunters in the base. In the past 7 years, his level had been stagnant. Seeing that Level 5, Level 6, and even Level 7 hunters had appeared in the base, he was naturally anxious. If he had the sign-in system, he would still be caught up by these people. That would be King awkward. Fortunately, he had finally broken through. And in one day he had leveled up twice. He was a Level 2 hunter and a Level 5 psychokinesis. Even if there were more than 3,000 hunters and 13 psychics in the base, they would not be enough to deal with him. One move was enough to suppress him. However, Immortal still did not intend to reveal his true strength. He had a feeling that someone in the base was trying to force him to show himself. He wasn't afraid, he just found it troublesome. He was signing in at the zombie farm every day, feeding the pigs and zombies, living a carefree life. There was no need to stir up so much trouble. Furthermore, his blood demon eyes would often observe that the northwest was filled with corpse chi. He didn't know how many zombies were there. According to the current style of the base, if they were exposed, they would definitely send him there to clean up the zombies. What a joke, it was so dangerous outside. Unless he became invincible, he wouldn't go out. However, 9 out of 10 things in the world did not go as one wished. He didn't want to go out, but God didn't let him. On this day, the leader of the corpse farm called Immortal, oldly and happy, to his office. He said, "The hunters have already cleaned up most of the zombies around the base. There are tens of thousands of zombies gathered at the dam in the northwest. The leader of the base has given the order to go there tomorrow to encircle and eliminate the zombies. You guys should go as well." The three of them looked at each other when they heard this. Immortal laughed dryly and said, "Leader, encircling and eliminating the zombies is a matter for the hunters and psychokinesis. Why should we blindly get involved?" The leader glared at Immortal. "The lab wants to capture some fresh zombie samples, but I'm afraid that we don't have enough manpower. They want us to send a few people over to help." "Immortal and Happy, you two can go." Immortal smiled bitterly in his heart when he heard this. What he was afraid of really happened. And this time they were going to the dam filled with corpse chi. He didn't know what dangers were hidden there. The leader said again, "Don't worry, you're just going to put in some effort. There's no need for you to fight the zombies. Besides, with your small physiques, you'll just be sending yourselves to your deaths if you fight the zombies." Immortal shook his head in resignation. "Leader, if I don't come back this time, don't raise your head when you go to the toilet at night." The leader glared at Immortal and scolded, "Get lost, go feed your pigs. Don't be so rude." Immortal chuckled and was about to leave. At that moment, the leader seemed to have suddenly remembered something. He called out to Immortal. He sized Immortal up from head to toe and asked, "What's the matter?" "Immortal, you've been here for 8 or 9 years, right?" Immortal didn't know what the leader meant, so he answered, 10 years. The leader was puzzled. "It's been 10 years and I've aged a lot. Old Lee's back is a little hunched, and Happy has grown into a woman in her 20s. Why don't you look the same? You still look like you're in your 20s. Immortal touched his face and said, Maybe it's because I took good care of myself. The leader waved his hand and scolded, "Get lost, you're always so rude." The next morning Immortal had just woken up. The leader had already come to the zombie farm to hurry them up. Immortal and Happy hurriedly packed up and were about to walk out of the zombie farm. Audi sent them to the door and said to Immortal and Happy, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of your zombies." Immortal was a little speechless when he heard that. Audi wanted to send them to the entrance of the laboratory. But the leader thought that his legs were not agile enough, so he waved his hand and said, "All right, Audi, I gave you a balloon and you want to be." At this point he realized that Happy was beside him. He didn't say the rest of his words. Of course, Immortal and Audi had already imagined it. Then Immortal and Happy arrived at the entrance of the laboratory. Before they left, the leader pulled a laboratory researcher to the side. He nodded and bowed, "Young man, please take good care of the two people in the zombie farm. They're not very smart and they've never left the base. Please." The researcher waved his hand impatiently, all right, I got it." These words were naturally heard by Immortal. His heart warmed slightly. Although the leader often scolded them. But just as Audi said, he had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. 8:30 in the morning. Immortal and Happy followed the 5 researchers in the laboratory and passed through the second line of defense of the base. They passed through a large wheat field and arrived at the first line of defense. The more than 3,000 zombie hunters and 13 psychokinesis also arrived one after another. 9 o'clock sharp. The iron gate on the city wall slowly opened. A ray of sunlight fell at Immortal's feet. Then the ray of sunlight slowly expanded. In the end, it enveloped a large number of zombie hunters nearby. Phew! Immortal looked at the blue sky outside the gate and let out a breath of turbid air. It had been 10 years and he was finally going to step out of the base for the first time. Chapter 23. Early in the morning. It was accompanied by creaking sounds. The gate of the base's city wall slowly opened. This city wall was built in ancient times. 1,000 years ago, it was used to resist the invasion of foreign races. Now, it protected people from the invasion of zombies. The ancestors who built the city wall 1,000 years ago would never have thought that the city wall they built would one day resist not foreign races but zombies. Immortal and Happy slowly walked out of the gate with more than 3,000 zombie hunters. Happy was like a curious baby. Like a child, he looked around and looked around. He explored this unfamiliar world. Immortal also looked outside. Outside the city wall, there was an empty area that had been cleared out, surrounding the entire base. This was to have a better view. If zombies appeared in the open area, they would be able to discover them earlier. The width of this open area was about 1 kilometer. After walking out of this 1 kilometer open area, they entered the lush wilderness. Although it was called the wilderness, it was actually an abandoned city. There had been no traces of humans for more than 10 years, and plants had already occupied this place. Even the weeds on the former road were now half the height of a person. From time to time, there would be abandoned cars on the road, parked in disorder. Some of the cars even had grass growing in them. The residential areas, shopping malls, and amusement parks on both sides of the road were now covered in green grass. From a distance, this was a completely green world. They left the city. They walked straight along a road. In the past few years, the zombie hunters had become stronger and stronger. They had already killed all the zombies nearby. There was no danger here at the moment. Therefore, these zombie hunters and psychokinesis were all talking and laughing. The laboratory researchers around Immortal were all very nervous because it was their first time leaving the base. Immortal, on the other hand, was calm. Although he had always been a coward. Since he was out, he would face it calmly. Anyway, with his current strength, although he was not invincible in the world, he was definitely a top-notch expert. Taking 10,000 steps back, he could now cross 100 meters with 1 step. With this speed, even if he could not win, he could always run away. Therefore, he had nothing to worry about. In the afternoon, they finally arrived at their destination. In front of them was a bridge that spanned the valley. The bridge had long been broken. It was like an old man in his twilight years, full of vicissitudes, standing in the wilderness. Below the bridge was the dam. Looking down from the bridge, one could vaguely see it. Thousands of zombies were wandering around the dam like wandering ghosts. When the hunters saw the zombies, they were all very excited. He rubbed his palms together. Finally, there's work to do. I haven't killed zombies for dozens of days. My hands are itching. Immortal frowned when he saw the zombies. He had used the blood demon's eye to see it. Although there were thousands of zombies here, it was obviously not enough for the zombie aura to fill the air. But now, the top of the dam was shrouded in blood-red corpse chi. The density of the corpse aura was like the thick fog after a long rain. There was definitely something fishy about this place. His pupils turned blood-red once again. The corpse chi was still lingering around the dam as if it was going to cover the sky. He withdrew the blood demon's eye, feeling slightly uneasy. The hunters had left the road and were heading towards the dam. He said to the zombie hunter next to him, "It's best if we don't go down." The hunter was a girl in her 20s. But she had short, steel-like hair. Seeing that the hunters had gone down, there was a clear desire in her eyes. She said impatiently to Immortal, "As a man, aren't you too cowardly? If it wasn't to protect you, I would have gone down to kill the zombies. Now, when we go down, the zombies will have been cleaned up by them. Don't dawdle, let's go." Immortal didn't say anything more. He walked down with them. When they were halfway down the slope, there were already roars and shouts of killing below. Those hunters killed the zombies as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. After killing the zombies, many of the hunters kicked the zombies' bodies directly into the dam. Plop, plop. In the dam, waves of blood that were as tall as a person kept splashing up. After more than 10 minutes, the entire water surface had turned blood red. When Immortal and the others came to the dam, there were already thousands of zombie corpses on the water surface, bobbing up and down in the bloody water. Immortal and the others walked forward slowly. The surroundings were filled with the smell of blood and corpses. The researchers all felt that their legs were weak. Even if they were used to seeing zombies in the face of such a hellish scene, they were already scared out of their wits. Happy couldn't help but hide behind Immortal and grab Immortal's arm tightly. Immortal also frowned slightly. Then he patted Happy's arm gently to comfort him. The short-haired female corpse hunter next to him kept sighing. From time to time she complained, "If it wasn't for you, I would have killed countless zombies by now." Immortal just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After more than 20 minutes, the zombies were almost cleaned up. There were only about 50 zombies left, and they were strung together by a few hunters with ropes. They pulled them over. Only then did the researchers begin to pick fresh zombie samples with trembling hands. Several hunters pressed down the selected sample zombies. Immortal and Happy put on special gloves and braces for these zombies to prevent them from scratching and biting humans. In the end, they chose more than 30 zombies with intact hands and feet and no obvious wounds on their bodies. After putting on the gloves and braces for these zombies, the researchers were obviously relieved. When the short-haired girl saw that there were more than 20 zombies left, she immediately became excited. She rolled up her sleeves. She spat into her hands and rubbed them. "The rest are all mine." As she spoke, she pulled out a short knife from her waist. Then he slashed at one of the zombies. Crack, crack, she cut down the 20 zombies as if she was cutting melons and vegetables. Then she kicked them one by one into the dam. She watched as the zombies splashed blood as high as a person in the water. The short-haired girl was as excited as a child playing with firecrackers during the new year. At this time, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. In less than 2 hours it would be dark. Immortal originally thought that they were going to camp by the dam. But he didn't expect the ponytailed leader of the hunter group to give an order. Just now, a hunter saw zombies in the residential area to the east. "While it's not dark yet, let's clean up the zombies in the residential area and see if there are any resources in the residential area that can be used." She was now a level 2 psychokinesis, the strongest existence in the entire hunter group. Under her leadership, the hunter group could be said to be invincible in the past few years. Everyone was very convinced by her. Even those level 7 zombie hunters followed her lead. Moreover, these hunters had already killed their way to the top. While the sky was not dark yet, everyone wanted to kill more zombies. At this time, the leader gave the order, so they naturally rushed to the residential area to the east of the dam to search. However, no one expected that. When they went, something big happened. Chapter 24. The setting sun was like blood, dyeing the grassy wilderness blood red. The blood-red water surface and the blood-red setting sun reflected each other. Thousands of corpses floated on the water surface. The 3,000 members of the hunter group had already gone to the residential area east of the dam. Immortal, Happy, and the researchers stayed by the dam. The short-haired girl was also with them. The surroundings were quiet, so quiet that it made people panic. The researchers were on tenterhooks in such an environment. The short-haired girl, on the other hand, looked carefree. She said, "Don't worry, the zombies nearby have just been cleared. What danger can there be?" As she said that, she comfortably hid on the slope next to her. With her words, the researchers felt a little more at ease. With a thought, Immortal took out the virtual sentry tower. The virtual sentry tower looked similar to a real sentry tower. It was just transparent. It was invisible and intangible. Except for Immortal, no one could feel it. Immortal connected his mental power to the virtual sentry tower. It was as if he had really climbed up a sentry tower and looked around. Everything within a 5-kilometer radius immediately appeared in his mind. The lake nearby, the broken bridge in the distance, the road, and so on were exactly the same. Moreover, the sentry tower also had a warning function. Once danger approached, the virtual sentry tower would immediately remind him. A moment later, a researcher looked at the water surface in the distance. He said to another researcher, "Did you notice anything wrong?" The researcher glanced at the blood-red water surface. He shook his head and asked, "What did you find?" The researcher from before replied, "Why do I feel that there are fewer corpses floating on the water than before?" The others glanced at the water surface. They all shook their heads. They didn't feel that there were fewer corpses. The short-haired girl didn't even raise her head and said, "You're thinking too much." The researcher nodded, "Maybe I'm thinking too much." However, more than 10 minutes later the researcher spoke again, "I still feel that there are fewer zombies." Everyone heard this and looked at the water surface. This time, everyone saw that something was wrong. They saw that at least 1/5 of the zombies floating on the water surface had disappeared. This made the researchers a little flustered. "What's going on? It's really a lot less." The short-haired girl raised her head and took a look. He said, "The density of these zombies' flesh is about the same as water. It's normal for them to float up and down in the water." Just as she finished speaking, a voice rang out. On the water surface in the distance, a mist slowly appeared. And it was a blood-red mist. After the blood mist appeared, it quickly spread across the dam. In just 2 minutes, it had already enveloped the entire dam. And it continued to spread in all directions. At the same time, the alarms of the virtual sentry tower kept ringing in Immortal's mind. Immortal's heart trembled slightly. The surrounding crowd saw the blood mist that was like a sandstorm, covering the sky and covering the earth. One by one they called out, "Run! Something's wrong." The short-haired girl's expression also changed. At the same time he shouted, "Go!" At the same time he pulled out 2 short knives from his waist. Immortal furrowed his brows. His eyes of the blood demon could see through the bloody mist. However, blood demon didn't find any zombies in the blood mist. Then how did this blood mist form? Why did it suddenly spread in such a large area? With doubts in his heart, he pulled happy and ran forward. However, the speed at which the blood mist spread far exceeded the speed at which they ran. They only ran a few dozen meters. The blood mist had already caught up with them. In a few seconds, everyone was swallowed up. And the moment the blood mist swallowed them, everyone only felt a bloody smell assailing their nostrils. The blood mist was extremely thick. The visibility around them was less than 5 meters. Everyone stopped in their tracks. The researchers all fell into deep panic. "What the hell is this? Think of a way. We can't escape. What should we do?" In panic, they all looked at the short-haired girl. "You're a zombie hunter. Think of a way." The short-haired girl frowned and roared, "Don't talk nonsense. Follow me to the residential area in the east." Even she, a zombie hunter, had never seen such a strange thing. At the moment, the safest way was to find a zombie hunter group. Immortal also thought that this was the best idea. At least if they went there, they would be further away from this strange dam. The short-haired girl led them forward in the blood mist. But a moment later, a researcher's legs suddenly went soft. He fell to the ground. The other researchers were shocked and quickly lowered their heads to check on his condition. However, when they lowered their heads, all the researchers fell to the ground and did not move. Happy, who was next to Immortal, had been holding onto Immortal's arm tightly because he was nervous. But at this moment, his hands loosened weakly and he also fell to the ground. The short-haired girl frowned. "Oh no, this blood mist is poisonous." Immortal was also shocked. He bent down and touched Happy's nose. Fortunately, it seemed that he had only fainted. At this moment, the virtual sentry tower's sound in his mind became even more urgent. Beep, beep, beep. It was obvious that danger was approaching. A moment later, a figure vaguely appeared in the mist in front of them. When the short-haired girl saw this, she asked, "Who is it?" The figure did not answer. The short-haired girl gripped her short knife tightly. The next moment, the figure walked towards the short-haired girl. The short-haired girl spat. If a man dies, his bird will face the sky. If he doesn't die, he will live for thousands of years. *CK. As she spoke, she was about to rush towards the black figure. However, the next moment she felt that her legs could not exert any strength at all. Then all the strength in her body seemed to have been sucked out. Her legs went soft and she fell to the ground. Obviously she was also poisoned. However, her physique was much better than that of ordinary people, so she held on for half a minute. Before she lost consciousness, she saw that the figure was already very close to her. She struggled to speak and cursed, *CK. The next moment, her vision turned black and she lost consciousness. What she did not know was that Immortal, the corpse keeper that she looked down on, was behind her. At this moment he was standing upright. He stared at the black figure in the blood mist without moving. The black figure in the blood mist was clearly puzzled when he saw that the human did not fall. He stood there straight and looked at Immortal. In fact, Immortal himself was a little puzzled. His body had been strengthened. Although he was able to resist the toxins of various poisonous insects, the poison in the blood mist was obviously not an ordinary biological poison. It should be zombie poison. In the past, Immortal had heard from researchers that occasionally, there would be some kind of poison in the body of zombies that could make humans faint. They called it zombie poison. However, there was only a small amount of zombie poison in the body of ordinary zombies. However, today's zombie poison was overwhelming. As a zombie hunter, the short-haired girl could only resist the zombie poison for a minute. Even if Immortal was a hunter and could resist for a little longer, he should at least feel that something was wrong with his body. However, the truth was that he did not feel any discomfort. At this moment, the system appeared in time to answer his questions. Frowny face. The Titan Dragon gene has a restraining effect on zombie poison. I see. Immortal thought to himself. The Titan Dragon gene seemed to suppress zombies in all aspects. The attack of the dragon claws could suppress the self-healing ability of mutated zombies. Now, it could directly ignore the zombie poison. This made Immortal look forward to the day when his whole body could transform into a Titan dragon, roaming the sky and overlooking the universe. How domineering would that be? At this moment, the black figure a few meters away saw that the human did not fall. A low growl came from its throat. Then it pounced on Immortal. In an instant it crossed a distance of 5 meters. Looking at its speed, it should be at least 10 times faster than the mutated zombie he saw 5 years ago. Chapter 25. In the blood fog, the black shadow pounced on Immortal. With just one step, it covered a distance of 5 meters. In an instant it arrived in front of Immortal. Judging from the speed alone, this black shadow was at least 10 times stronger than the mutated zombie he saw 5 years ago. However, in the next moment, Immortal raised his right foot high. Then he slammed it down. Woo! His right leg cut through the air at high speed. The thick blood fog in front of him, under his slash, actually split open a crack that was tens of meters long and 5 meters wide. Puff! This kick landed on the top of the black shadow's head. The black shadow's entire body, like a balloon, burst in an instant. Blood and minced meat scattered in all directions. Then this kick landed on the ground. The ground suddenly exploded with a bang. A trace of the explosion instantly extended to a distance of 50 meters away. 50 meters away, more than 10 zombies surrounded. But under the power of this explosion, their bodies suddenly flew out to both sides. The power of this kick was so strong. Immortal was also a little surprised in his heart. After evolving into a hunter, he had never tested his strength. Just now, he only used 10% of his strength. It had such a shocking effect. At this moment, his pupils had turned blood red. Blood demon eyes opened. Suddenly, the thick blood fog around him seemed to not exist in his eyes. His gaze passed through the thick blood fog and looked around. He saw that there were thousands of zombies surrounding him. These zombies were all wet from head to toe, leaving wet footprints with every step they took. As for the floating zombie corpses above the dam, they had long since disappeared. Obviously, they should be the zombies that were thrown into the dam before. Immortal frowned slightly. These zombies were clearly dead and even half of their heads had been cut off. How did they come back to life? These thousands of zombies, smelling the scent of a living person, surrounded Immortal one after another. Roar, hiss, hiss. From the throats of the zombies, there were all kinds of strange sounds. They quickly ran toward Immortal, stirring up the blood fog for a while. Immortal did not move. Telekinesis instantly spread out, covering a radius of 500 meters. In the next moment, not far from his feet, a fist-sized rock suddenly trembled slightly. Then he flew up into the air. Then, another rock the size of a human head trembled twice and suddenly flew into the air. Then, the third, the fourth, the fifth, around Immortal, all the rocks weighing less than 50 kilograms were lifted off the ground. Then it quickly flew around him. His speed was extremely fast. These rocks circled around him, forming a spinning belt of rocks within a radius of 100 meters. At this point, the first zombie had already entered the area where the stones were flying. Bang! A fist-sized rock instantly pierced through the zombie's chest while flying at high speed. Bang! Another rock the size of a human head smashed into the zombie's shoulder. Its shoulder was instantly mangled. One of his arms flew far away. The next moment, bang 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 bang, in the blink of an eye the zombie was blasted into pieces by rocks of all sizes. Then the second zombie also entered the spinning stone area. Bang bang bang, in an instant he was also turned into meat paste. In front of the high-speed spinning stones, their bodies were as fragile as paper. Zombies had no emotions, so naturally they had no fear. One by one they rushed into the spinning stone area. Bang 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 bang, suddenly, broken limbs and body parts flew together, the flesh and blood were the same color as the stones. This spinning stone area was like a huge meat grinder with a radius of 100 meters. All the zombies that rushed in were almost instantly minced into pieces, scattered on the ground. The ground was also dyed red with blood in just half a minute. Soon almost all the stones turned blood red. It seemed that Immortal was flying around like a bloody torrent. In just a few seconds, thousands of zombies were torn apart by this bloody torrent. This was the move that Immortal figured out after seeing Sister Ponytail's flying knives. Sister Ponytail could only control 24 flying knives at most now. But Immortal could control thousands of stones. And this move saved more telekinesis than purely using telekinesis to detonate the zombie's head. More than 300 meters away, a mutated zombie saw this scene, and his eyes were full of horror. When did humans become so powerful? In horror he quickly turned around and wanted to escape. However, it was too late. Immortal moved 100 meters in one step. In 3 steps he came in front of the mutated zombie. Then he moved his telekinesis. Crash! Thousands of blood-red stones flew up 50 meters in the air. Then they fell from the sky. Like a bloody torrent they smashed into the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie didn't even have time to react before it was smashed into meat paste. And the stones quickly piled up into a pile of blood-red stones about 5 meters high on its meat paste. It was like a huge blood-red tomb. After doing this, Immortal glanced around with the blood demon's eye. There was no danger for the time being. The alarm of the virtual sentry tower had also disappeared at this time. Immortal returned to the humans. Looking at these humans who had fallen into a coma, he was in a dilemma. How to take these humans out? There was no car and his system backpack couldn't put living things. At this time, the sound of the virtual sentry tower suddenly sounded again. Beep, 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 beep. At first the frequency of the sound was relatively low. But soon it became more and more urgent. Immortal's heart skipped a beat. He looked around with the blood demon's eye. With one look he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw in the blood fog a 5-meter-long big guy was crawling towards him quickly. This thing was covered in scales. It had thick limbs. Its mouth could be grinned to the back of its head. This turned out to be a 5-meter-long crocodile. A mutated giant crocodile. This mutated giant crocodile was extremely fast. It was even faster than a human sprinter. Seeing this, Immortal looked at his right arm. The next moment his right arm quickly thickened. Pieces of black scales the size of fingernails appeared. His entire right hand turned into a dragon claw. At this moment, the mutated giant crocodile was less than 10 meters away from Immortal. Its pair of small eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. It opened its huge mouth and pounced towards Immortal. Immortal leaped. He was already above the mutated giant crocodile's head. The titan dragon claw swung down. Whoosh, a black light flashed. The mutated giant crocodile's body was directly cut into 2 at the waist. In fact, Immortal's titan dragon claw was only as long as his arm. Logically speaking, it was impossible to cut open the mutated giant crocodile's body that was more than 2 meters tall. However, when Immortal swung out the titan dragon claw, the tip of the dragon claw erupted with an invisible force. This force was even sharper than a sword. In an instant, the mutated giant crocodile that was more than 2 meters tall was cut into 2. And on the ground under the mutated giant crocodile's body, there were 5 huge claw marks that were more than 20 meters long, 2 meters wide, and half a meter deep. The power of this claw was even more terrifying than this. However, at this moment, accompanied by the sound of splashing water, another mutated giant crocodile crawled out of the dam. Then, the third, the fourth, the fifth. In just half a minute, more than 100 mutated giant crocodiles crawled out of the water. Immortal was also in the mood to kill at this time. With a thought, his left arm also turned into a titan dragon claw. He directly jumped into the group of mutated giant crocodiles. Whoosh, a claw slashed. An invisible force shot out from the tip of the claw. 3 mutated giant crocodiles that were 5 meters long were instantly cut into 6 pieces. Whoosh, Immortal was in a bowling posture, his right claw almost touching the ground as he slashed forward. That invisible force instantly shot forward more than 100 meters. Within this 100 meters, all the mutated giant crocodiles were cut into several pieces. Immortal was very happy. Wasn't this like what was written in novels such as Saber Energy, Sword Energy, and Athlete's Foot? He used to only think that the Titan Dragon Claw was very sharp. He didn't expect that when he used his full strength, the invisible force in it was 100 times sharper than any saber or sword. The destructive power was also far beyond imagination. In excitement, he waved his claws continuously. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Every time he waved his claw, at least a few to more than 10 mutated giant crocodiles would be cut into 2. Not long after, the mutated giant crocodile corpses were lying on the side of the dam in a mess. Immortal looked at his dragon claws and then looked at the mutated giant crocodile corpses on the ground. The Titan Dragon Claw was simply ridiculously strong. These mutated giant crocodiles had palm-sized hard scales on their bodies. Even bullets couldn't penetrate them. It was estimated that even a rocket might not be able to cause damage to them. The Titan Dragon Claw could easily kill the mutated giant crocodiles with just the invisible force. Just as Immortal was sighing in his heart. In his mind, the voice of the virtual sentry tower suddenly sounded quickly. D. Chapter 26. After Immortal killed hundreds of mutated giant crocodiles, the voice of the virtual sentry tower suddenly sounded in his mind. D. Immortal immediately raised his head and scanned the surroundings with his blood demon eyes. The next moment he looked above the dam. He saw that the blood-red water in the dam was constantly churning. The water was getting bigger and bigger. It gradually turned into a blood wave. At first, the blood wave was only a meter high. Gradually, it became higher and higher. It reached more than 10 meters. Whoosh, in the rolling blood wave, a huge figure emerged from the water. Roar, the huge mouth opened and a shocking roar was heard. The water seemed to be trembling under the roar. Immortal looked at the figure carefully. It was more than 20 meters long. Its back was covered with black scales. Each scale was more than 30 centimeters in diameter. On its back there was a spine that looked like a sword dragon. Its head was like a crocodile, but there were more than 10 thick barbs. It looked more ferocious than an ordinary giant crocodile. In the huge mouth, each of the sharp teeth was more than half a meter long. This was a mutated crocodile king. The mutated crocodile king glanced at the mutated giant crocodile corpses on the ground. In a pair of blood-red eyes, anger rose. Again it roared to the sky. Roar, Immortal moved his mind. The dragon claws on his arms quickly disappeared. The next moment, the bones in his right hand pierced the skin and quickly grew. It turned into a 3-meter-long black spear. Then he grabbed the sky splitter dragon spear with his right hand and used a little strength. In an instant he threw it. Whoosh, the dragon spear was like a black lightning. In an instant it traveled more than 200 meters. Chi, it directly pierced through the head of the mutated giant crocodile king. Then it flew far away. After flying more than 300 meters, it fell into the water with a splash. The roaring giant crocodile king stopped abruptly. The next moment, it fell backward with a bang. Splash. A huge blood wave more than 10 meters high splashed up. A moment later, its corpse sank into the blood water. Instant kill. The mutated crocodile king thought that it could easily swallow this human. It never expected that it wouldn't last as long as the small mutated crocodiles under its command. It emerged from the water and roared twice. Then he was killed instantly. It was probably the most embarrassing mutated beast to have died. Immortal used his bloodthirsty demon eyes to scan his surroundings. There was no longer any danger around. The voice of the virtual sentry tower stopped ringing. He thought for a moment. He took out a bottle of recovery potion. This recovery potion was not meant for him to consume. The battle just now seemed very intense and it must have consumed a lot of his energy. but in fact it was completely one-sided. Until now he hadn't even broken a single sweat. His recovery medicine was for Happy. Once Happy took the recovery medicine, he woke up in less than 3 minutes. When she saw Immortal, her eyes flickered slightly. Immortal knew what she meant. He chuckled. "Don't worry, I'm fine. You're fine too." A sunny smile appeared on Happy's face. She sat up. When she saw the flesh and blood around her and the researchers lying motionless on the ground, she couldn't help but feel nervous again. She subconsciously grabbed Immortal's arm. Immortal smiled at her comfortingly and said, "They just fainted. They should wake up soon." Happy nodded. At this moment, Immortal saw that there was no danger around. With a thought he said, "That's right. System, sign in." He didn't sign in before he came out this morning. He planned to leave the sign-in opportunity in the wilderness. It was his first time signing in outside the base. He didn't know if he could get anything good. The system's voice sounded in his mind. Sign-in successful. Sign-in location, Wilderness Dam. Sign-in reward, 1. Mutated Giant Crocodile King Gene Enhancer 1. 2. Zombie Giant Crocodile Blood 1 drop. He looked at the gene enhancer in his backpack in his mind. Mutated Giant Crocodile King Gene Enhancer. 1. After injection it can stimulate cells and produce mutated Giant Crocodile King scales on the body's skin, greatly increasing defense. 2. After injection the body will emit the mutated Giant Crocodile King's aura, which is an absolute deterrent to mutated giant crocodiles. Zombie Giant Crocodile Blood. When exposed to the air, it will emit the Zombie Giant Crocodile King's aura. It is an extremely strong deterrent to zombies and mutated giant crocodiles. Immortal nodded. The reward this time was very practical. He looked to the east of the dam at the residential area in the distance. If he signed in there tomorrow he didn't know what he would get. Just as Immortal was thinking about this, a shocking roar suddenly came from the residential area. This sound was somewhat similar to the mutated giant crocodile king's roar. Immortal frowned slightly. There were also mutated giant crocodiles there? He pondered for a moment and said, "Something might have happened. You stay here, I'll go and take a look." He wasn't a saint who would take the risk to save the hunter group. It was just that it was the apocalypse, and all humans shared a common destiny. If something happened to the hunter group, the strength of the base would be greatly reduced. Then it wouldn't be so easy for him to continue hiding in the base and signing in comfortably in the future. But Happy grabbed Immortal's arm, and there was a look of concern in her eyes. It was as if she was saying, "Don't go." Immortal smiled at her comfortingly and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Then he took out the small bottle he had just obtained from signing in. There was a drop of dark red blood in the bottle. Zombie Giant Crocodile King's blood. He stuffed the bottle into Happy's hand. He reminded her, "If you encounter danger, open the bottle cap. Remember?" Seeing that Immortal insisted on going, Happy could only nod. When she first came to the zombie farm she was only 15 years old. During the 5 years in the city, Immortal had always been like a big brother and took care of her. So she still listened to Immortal's words. Immortal turned his head and took 2 steps. But his footsteps stopped again. When he turned around he saw that Happy's eyes were following him. He walked back again. He rubbed Happy's head. Immediately Happy's hair was messed up. In the past few years, the two of them had become very familiar with each other. Occasionally they would play around like siblings. Every time he would rub Happy's head like this. He would rub her neatly combed hair into a mess. A smile immediately appeared on Happy's face. Immortal exhorted again, "Don't worry. Remember, open the bottle cap when you encounter danger." Happy nodded heavily. She expressed that she remembered. Although she didn't know what was strange in the bottle, she had always believed in Immortal's words. Only then did Immortal feel relieved and strode towards the residential area. A moment later he disappeared from Happy's sight. More than 5 minutes later, Immortal was already not far away from the residential area. He was not in a hurry to investigate the situation in the residential area. Instead, with a thought, he took out the mutated giant crocodile king gene enhancer. He clenched his left hand into a fist and gently exerted force with his right finger. He injected the enhancer into his body. Chapter 27. Immortal injected the mutant giant crocodile king gene enhancer into his body. He began to feel a burning sensation in his body. This feeling was far from being as strong as the Titan Dragon gene enhancer. However, he could clearly feel that some cells in his body were undergoing rapid genetic mutations. Most of these cells were located on the surface of the body. In the beginning, only a small portion of the cells were undergoing a breakthrough. However, the surface of his body did not change at all. Gradually, more and more cells underwent genetic mutations. It slowly approached a critical point. At a certain moment, this critical point was finally broken. The quantitative change triggered a qualitative change. The surface of his body began to change rapidly. The surface of his skin continued to harden and formed scales the size of a fingernail. Just like the scales on the mutant giant crocodile. These scales were not metallic black like the dragon claw scales. Instead, there was a faint red color in the black. Soon these scales covered his entire body. Even his head was covered by scales. Only a pair of eyes were exposed. Immortal was delighted. Previously, other than the dragon claw, his body's defense was not too strong. But now that the mutant giant crocodile scales covered his entire body, his body's defense would be greatly enhanced. Then he leaped. In an instant he was 100 meters away. He leaped toward the residential area. Back to 20 minutes ago. On the east side of the dam in the residential area. The hunter group drove into the residential area and found that there were indeed many zombies in the residential area. There were about 2,000 of them. They were extremely excited. All the hunter group scrambled to pounce on those zombies. After all, there were too many monks and too little porridge. If they were a little slower, there would be no zombies to kill. After they killed the zombies in the courtyard, they searched the residential building. There were also many zombies in the residential building. However, with the strength of their hunter group, it was only a matter of time before they killed these zombies. Most of the 3,000 hunter group entered the residential building. Only the leader, Sister Ponytail, the deputy leader, Yang, and a few psychokinesis stayed in the courtyard. They thought that the cleaning this time would be as smooth as before. But 5 minutes later, a scream suddenly came. Ah! They hurriedly raised their heads to look. They saw the 5th floor of a residential building. A corpse hunter fell from above. Bang! He fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Their hearts trembled as they hurriedly rushed over. A bloody hole the size of an arm appeared where the heart of the corpse hunter was. The heart was nowhere to be seen in the bloody hole. Not good. Yang exclaimed and hurriedly wanted to go over to check. Ah! However, another cry of agony was heard. On the residential building next to them, another hunter crashed through the window and fell down. Following that, screams continued to ring out. The expressions of Sister Ponytail and the others changed. Sister Ponytail quickly spread out her psychic power to check the surroundings. Soon they found that there were mutated zombies in the surrounding buildings. Moreover, these mutated zombies were much faster than the mutated zombies he had seen before. His strength was even stronger. Even a level 5 zombie hunter was no match for these mutated zombies. At this time, these hunters had become the targets of the mutated zombies. Miss Ponytail knew that something was wrong. He hastily called out, "All hunters withdraw from the residential building." Soon the hunters withdrew one after another. But even so, more than 50 hunters had been killed. Sister Ponytail frowned. In less than a minute, more than 50 hunters were lost. Since the establishment of the hunter group, there had never been such a heavy loss. If those mutated zombies came to the yard, she could control the 24 flying knives and behead them. However, those mutated zombies seemed to know the power of psychokinesis and did not come to the yard at all. She could only order, "Everyone withdraw from the community." Everyone never doubted her orders. They immediately withdrew out of the community. However, before they could withdraw from the community, a hunter suddenly shouted, "Leader, what is that?" Everyone heard this and looked towards the entrance of the community. They saw that at the entrance of the community overgrown with weeds, a cloud of mist suddenly spread out. Moreover, this cloud of mist was not an ordinary white but blood red. The blood mist was spreading at an extremely fast speed towards the hunter group. Obviously they could not escape even if they wanted to. Sister Ponytail immediately ordered, "Everyone back to back, pay attention to defense." Before she finished speaking, the body hunters at the front were already swallowed by the blood mist. In less than half a minute, the entire hunter group was shrouded in the blood mist. In the blood mist, the visibility was only about 5 meters. Moreover, the psychokinesis found that in the blood mist, the range of their psychokinesis detection was greatly reduced. Even Sister Ponytail, a level 2 psychokinesis, could only detect a range of about 100 meters. Fortunately, as long as the psychokinesis stood within the range of their psychokinesis could be shared. So now, it was equivalent to that every psychokinesis could detect a range of about 300 meters around them. Under such detection, all the psychokinesis faces changed drastically. They saw that the hunter group was densely packed with zombies. These zombies were constantly pouring out from the surrounding residential buildings. All of their paths of retreat had been sealed off. If they wanted to leave, they would have to step over these zombies' bodies. These zombies, if not 70 to 80,000, were at least 30 to 50,000. And among these zombies, there were many mutated zombies. If they all swarmed up, even if the hunter group had more than 3,000 hunters, it would be impossible to stop them. Wu Jiutao, who was somewhat effeminate, was now the captain of the hunter group. He was one of the first hunters. At this moment, he heard these psychokinesis say that there were tens of thousands of zombies surrounding them. He could not help but think back to 5 years ago. On that night 5 years ago, the 15 of them were the first hunters. They thought that they were invincible and became arrogant. They broke into the encirclement of thousands of zombies and were almost wiped out. If it were not for the timely appearance of the mysterious powerhouse, they would have died many years ago. At that time, they thought that they had learned a profound lesson and would never make the same mistake again. But they were wrong. Humans were forgetful. 5 years later, a hunter group with more than 3,000 people, 13 psychokinesis. They became arrogant again. As a result, they were once again surrounded by enemies. Thinking of this, he could not help but look at Sister Ponytail. The mysterious powerhouse from 5 years ago, the current Captain Ponytail. The powerful level 2 psychokinesis. This time, could Captain Ponytail repeat the miracle from last time? The others nearby also turned their gazes to Sister Ponytail. In this situation, it seemed that only Captain Ponytail could save them. After all, she was once the mysterious powerhouse. The existence that could kill thousands of zombies with one move. Chapter 28. The 3,000 hunters were besieged by tens of thousands of zombies. It seemed that they would not be able to escape. In this moment of crisis, everyone recalled that night 5 years ago. So, everyone looked at Miss Ponytail. 5 years ago, it was her appearance that killed thousands of zombies with one move. That saved the entire base. If there was anyone who could save them now, it could only be her. However, what they did not know was that Miss Ponytail was thinking, is the mysterious powerhouse among them? But she also knew that she could not only put her hopes on the mysterious powerhouse. Maybe the mysterious powerhouse did not come out with them at all. Her face was cold and she said, "All hunters protect psychokinesis. Don't let any zombies get close to psychokinesis. All psychokinesis except for me, divide into 12 areas and guard the surroundings with your telekinesis." Psychokinesis was very strong. They could fight against 10 or even dozens of hunters. However, their fleshly bodies were very fragile. They were like ordinary people. As long as they were approached, ordinary people could stab them to death with a fruit knife. Under Miss Ponytail's order, everyone began to make a defensive posture in an orderly manner. At this moment, roars were heard from all directions. Roar, 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 the surrounding zombies pounced on them. All of the psychics felt their hearts skip a beat. They spread out their telekinesis. At the same time, each psychokinesis had at least 12 flying knives. They used their telekinesis to control the flying daggers, forming a barrier of light around the hunting group. A zombie that just entered the range of the light was instantly killed by a piercing through the head. Puff, 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 puff. Hundreds of thousands of zombies had their heads pierced through almost in an instant. The surrounding flying knives were all stained with blood in an instant. The flying knives were stained with blood. The shield of light was also blood red. Of course, under the cover of the blood fog, those hunters could not see all of this. They could only hear the endless roars of countless zombies. From this, one could imagine the intensity of the battle. For a full 5 minutes, tens of thousands of zombies fell under the flying knives. But these zombies were just ordinary zombies. As for the mutated zombies around, they had not made a move yet. They were biding their time. Sister Ponytail and the other psychokinesis patients all had grave expressions on their faces. They could feel that the zombies around them were like an endless flood. Although their telekinesis attacks were strong, there would always be a time when they would be exhausted. At that time, no one would be able to stop the zombies. At this moment, a roar was heard. Roar. Along with this roar, the zombies suddenly stopped attacking and roaring. The surroundings instantly went from a state of intense battle to a dead silence. All the hunters were stunned. They could not see anything and could only rely on their hearing. But just now the battle was clearly very intense, so why did it suddenly become quiet? Psychokinesis, on the other hand, used psychokinesis to investigate. He found that the surrounding zombies were continuously moving to the side. A path was left open. Then, one after another, huge figures appeared in these tunnels. Each of them was 5 meters long. He was about 1.5 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in thick and heavy scales. "This is a mutated giant crocodile," Psychokinesis exclaimed. When the surrounding hunters heard this, their expressions changed. They had seen almost all mutated beasts, but they had never heard of a mutated giant crocodile. Roar! The roar of a wild beast was heard. Roar! Roar! Dozens, even hundreds of roars sounded at the same time. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. Sister Ponytail quickly said, "Psychokinesis, pay attention to those mutated giant crocodiles. Hunters on the periphery, prepare for battle." Yes. Everyone's expression froze. At this moment, the first mutated giant crocodile had already entered the range of the flying daggers. Suddenly, dozens of flying daggers like thousands of swords attacked it. Whoosh 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 whoosh. However, all the flying daggers only left a few sparks on the mutated giant crocodile's body. The flying daggers collided with the scales on its body, making a shrill sound. Ding 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 ding. Seeing this, Sister Ponytail's heart sank. She quickly gathered her psychokinesis and controlled the 24 flying daggers to stab the mutated giant crocodile. Puff 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 puff. The 24 flying daggers, without exception, all pierced the head of the mutated giant crocodile. However, although these flying daggers pierced the head of the mutated giant crocodile, they only went half an inch in. And such a small injury did not affect the mutated giant crocodile at all with its thick scales. Instead, it provoked the mutated giant crocodile's ferocity. It roared and pounced on the hunters. It opened its mouth. Crack. With just one bite, 3 hunters were bitten in half. Sister Ponytail was shocked and roared, "Psychokinesis, attack the mutated giant crocodile with all your might." Therefore, the psychokinesis of the 13 psychokinesis, including Sister Ponytail, twisted together their psychokinesis. They controlled more than 100 flying daggers. They attacked the mutated giant crocodile together. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Sister Ponytail's flying daggers first left wounds on the mutated giant crocodile's body. The other psychokinesis flying daggers took the opportunity to attack these wounds. Puff 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 puff. For a full minute, the mutated giant crocodile's body was covered in wounds and dripping with blood. Finally, it roared unwillingly and its huge head finally hung down. However, before the hunter group could breathe a sigh of relief, mutated giant crocodiles appeared in almost all directions. There were more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles. They pounced at the hunter group in the center at an extremely fast speed. Sister Ponytail was the first to sense the 300 mutated giant crocodiles. At this moment, her face was ashen. The rest of the psychokinesis felt their hands and feet turn cold after sensing the 300 mutated giant crocodiles. Their hearts sank to the bottom of the valley. The 13 psychokinesis had only managed to kill one mutated giant crocodile with great difficulty. Now, more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles pounced at them at the same time. They had no way to deal with it. Fire! Sister Ponytail roared loudly. Those hunters carried firearms with them. When they heard this, although they could not see their target, they all pulled the trigger at the surrounding blood fog. Da-da-da-da-da. Thousands of rifles spat out tongues of fire at the blood fog. Ding 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 ding. In the blood fog, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. When everyone heard this sound, their expressions became extremely ugly. When the bullets hit these mutated giant crocodiles, other than splashing a few sparks, they did not have any effect at all. And those mutated giant crocodiles were getting closer and closer. At the same time, there were zombies attacking together with the mutated giant crocodiles. Thousands of zombies. Moreover, those mutated zombies that had not made a move until now finally moved this time. Following these mutated giant crocodiles, they attacked the hunter group. 100 meters, 50 meters, 20 meters, all the psychokinesis had fallen into deep despair. It was over. It was completely over. In front of this flood of zombies and mutated giant crocodiles, it would not take more than 20 minutes. Their entire hunter group would be wiped out. And those hunters, although they could not see, but they could hear. Tens of thousands of roars, tens of thousands of roars, the sound of rolling footsteps like muffled thunder. They were as if they were in the middle of a storm. In front of nature, humans were so desperate. At this moment, they were so desperate. However, at this moment, a shocking roar suddenly came out. Roar? Chapter 29. They listened to the rumbling footsteps around them. Thousands of roars. All the members of the hunter group were wrapped in overwhelming despair. In extreme despair, they couldn't help but look at Commander Ma in the center. If there was anyone who could save them now, it would be the mysterious powerhouse, Commander Ma. However, only the deputy commander, Yang Kong, knew. Commander Ma was not the mysterious powerhouse at all. Commander Ma was indeed very strong. The most powerful existence in the hunter group. Even if more than 50 hunters attacked her together, they might not be her opponent. Psychokinesis combined was not as strong as her. However, compared to the mysterious powerhouse in Yang Kang's impression, she was still far, far away. However, Yang Kang did not despair because of this. If there was someone who had the strongest desire to survive at this time, then it was only him. He had a belief in his heart. No matter what, he could not die. 3 years ago, his wife had passed away due to illness. Only the father and daughter were left to rely on each other. His daughter was still waiting for him at the base. If he died here, how would his daughter live alone in the future? So, no matter what, he had to live. Under the current circumstances, his only hope of survival was the mysterious powerhouse. He forced himself to believe that the mysterious powerhouse was nearby. The mysterious powerhouse would not leave him in the lurch. In this situation of crisis, when Xuanhuan was about to be wiped out, suddenly, a shocking roar was heard. Roar, roar. This roar was like the birth of a giant beast that could destroy the world. It was like the roar of an ancient dragon. The tens of thousands of zombies trembled when they heard the roar. These ordinary zombies should not have any emotions. There should not be any fear. But at this moment, when they heard this roar, they turned around and fled. As if it was the roar of the devil. The more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles also trembled after hearing this roar. Then all the mutated giant crocodiles turned around and fled. In fact, after this roar, Li Qia's expression changed drastically. Even the surrounding blood mist instantly rolled away. When the blood mist quickly retreated, everyone saw the surrounding situation. The thousands of zombies fled in all directions. Many zombies even fell to the ground and were trampled by the zombies behind them. They seemed to be able to hear the sound of the zombies' limbs being broken. As for those mutated giant crocodiles, they were even more terrified and quickly fled. The zombies in front of them were mercilessly trampled into meat paste. Everyone in the hunting group looked at all of this with incomparable horror. Miss Ponytail was also extremely shocked. The ponytail that had been swinging back and forth in front of the men was no longer swinging. Because of the shock, all the psychokinesis people controlled the knife throwing. At this moment, all of them fell to the ground with tinkling sounds, including Sister Ponytail. With a roar, tens of thousands of zombies and over 300 mutated giant crocodiles were scared away. What in the world was it? How could it be so powerful? Yang Kang's heart skipped a beat. A mysterious expert. At the same time, at the entrance of the residential area, Mo Shi, who was wearing a camouflage uniform, was standing there motionlessly. His skin was the same color as the surrounding weeds. The camouflage uniform was also the same color as the surrounding grass. His entire person seemed to have become one with the surrounding environment. When he had just rushed over the blood demons, I saw through the layers of blood mist and saw that the hunting group was almost wiped out. He immediately opened his mouth. The corpse roar technique was used. With a roar, tens of thousands of zombies were scared away. As for the 300 mutated giant crocodiles, they fled because they felt the aura of the mutated giant crocodile king on him. After injecting the mutated giant crocodile king gene enhancer, his body would emit the aura of the mutated giant crocodile king. With a roar, it was easy to scare away 300 mutated giant crocodiles. However, was it over? Since Mo Shi had already come, how could he watch these zombies and the 300 mutated giant crocodiles escape? He watched the tens of thousands of zombies drilling into the surrounding residential buildings. Then he saw the 300 mutated giant crocodiles drilling into every corner of the residential area. He smiled faintly. His telekinesis instantly spread out. In the next moment he saw that in the courtyard, more than 3,000 people in the hunting group fell to the ground at the same time. Mo Shi's telekinesis could control any object under 50 kilograms. Although he couldn't throw these people away. However, in a situation where they were unprepared, it was easy to trip them to the ground. More than 3,000 people in the hunting group fell to the ground at the same time. How spectacular. More than 3,000 people in the hunting group were all terrified. Could it be that after scaring away the zombies and mutated giant crocodiles, he was going to fight them? Just as everyone in the hunting group was shocked and wanted to crawl out of the hole, Immortal moved. The bones in his right hand made cracking sounds. His entire right hand quickly became bigger. In a moment, his entire right hand turned into a wide, pitch-black axe blade. The axe blade was half-moon-shaped. At its widest part, it was more than a meter wide. This was the genetic martial art that was formed in his body after he evolved into a hunter. For 5 years he had never used his full strength. This time he would try his full strength. At this moment his eyes flashed. His right arm swept across. The axe blade quickly expanded as he swept across. In just a moment it expanded to more than 500 meters wide. This more than 500 meters wide, half-moon-shaped huge axe blade swept across half a meter above the ground. Everyone only saw a huge black shadow, less than a meter above their heads, sweeping past at an extremely fast speed. The next moment, they saw all the zombies that were running away. Their bodies were instantly cut in half. Tens of thousands of zombies were cut in half at the same time. How magnificent was this scene! Even those mutated zombies without exception were cut into 2 pieces. And zombies wouldn't die if their heads weren't severely injured. But now, after these zombies were cut in half at the waist, they all fell to the ground, motionless. It was as if the black shadow just now had some kind of factor that could restrain zombies. Mutated zombies had self-healing factors in their bodies. Their wounds would heal quickly. But now, after being cut in half, their wounds didn't show any signs of healing. It wasn't just these zombies. All the mutated giant crocodiles were also cut in half by this black shadow. They were originally running away crazily. But as they ran they were cut in half. This made everyone's eyes widen. Psychokinesis had just spent a lot of effort to kill a mutated giant crocodile. But now, more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles were instantly killed by that black shadow. How sharp was that black shadow? Previously, the entire community was filled with the roars of zombies and mutated giant crocodiles. At this moment, it instantly fell into a dead silence. Even the members of the hunter group who were alive didn't make a sound. Everyone looked at the corpses on the ground around them, smelling the bloody smell that assaulted their noses. They were all shocked to the extreme. How powerful must one be to be able to do all this? Gulp. It wasn't until a moment later that a hunter's throat made a swallowing sound. This sound seemed to have triggered a chain effect. Gulp. 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 Almost everyone's throat kept making swallowing sounds. Chapter 30. Only the last ray of the setting sun was left on the horizon. But this ray of setting sun made the entire horizon as red as blood. The entire abandoned community was also dyed red. There were more than 3,000 zombie hunters in this community. But these 3,000 zombie hunters were all dumbstruck. Their faces were all full of shock. Gulp. After a while, the sound of swallowing saliva was heard one after another. At this moment, they finally understood why more than 3,000 of them fell at the same time. Obviously, it was done by the person who killed these zombies and mutated giant crocodiles. If they didn't fall to the ground just now, all of them would definitely end up like these zombies, killing more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles and tens of thousands of zombies in an instant. Just one move. This made many people recall what happened 5 years ago. At that time, a mysterious powerhouse suddenly appeared and killed thousands of zombies in an instant. And now, he killed tens of thousands of zombies and more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles in an instant. Who else could have such means besides him? Thinking of this, everyone looked at Commander Ma. They instinctively thought of Commander Ma. After all, they had always thought that the mysterious powerhouse from 5 years ago was Commander Ma. However, when they saw Commander Ma fall to the ground like them, they were stunned. All of them were stunned. It seemed that the person who attacked was not Commander Ma at all. Moreover, that roar just now shocked tens of thousands of zombies and more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles. It was not Commander Ma at all. The 12 psychokinesis people saw it even more clearly. With their telekinesis, they could clearly feel that the person who attacked just now was standing in the direction of the community's gate. They hurriedly looked at the gate. However, as far as their eyes could see, there was no one. At this time, Commander Ma was already too ashamed to show his face. Was he finally going to be exposed? These zombie hunters had always thought of themselves as the mysterious powerhouse. They worshipped and believed in themselves. They had no doubts about their orders. But now they found out that they had been deceiving them all along. What should they think? Yang Kong was the first to stand up. Because he was excited, he used too much strength when he stood up and almost fell to the ground again. His eyes were like a radar, constantly searching around. 5 years ago, the mysterious powerhouse saved him. 5 years later, he was saved by the mysterious powerhouse again. He was not afraid of death. But he was afraid that his daughter would lose her support. If he died here today, how would his daughter survive alone? And now, the mysterious expert had not only saved his life. It was also to ensure that his daughter would not lose him as her pillar of support. He was afraid that he would never be able to repay this kindness in this lifetime. He just wanted to say, thank you, to that mysterious expert. However, as far as he could see, there was no mysterious expert. He searched for a long time. He withdrew his gaze in disappointment. In the end, he turned his gaze back to Sister Ponytail. He had already made up his mind. He was unable to repay the favor of the mysterious expert. But at the very least, he wanted to let everyone know that all of this was not done by Commander Ma, but by a mysterious expert. This was the only thing he could do for the mysterious expert. However, before he could speak, a shocking roar could be heard all of a sudden. Oh, roar! All the members of the hunter group were shocked. However, they could clearly tell that this roar was not from the same creature as the one that had repelled all the zombies just now. Moreover, the two roars came from different directions. The previous roar came from the gate of the residential area. And this roar came from the back door of the residential area. The next moment, accompanied by this roar, a huge figure quickly appeared. Everyone in the hunter group was startled when they saw the figure. It was also a mutated giant crocodile. However, this mutated giant crocodile was several times larger than the other mutated giant crocodiles. From head to toe, it was more than 30 meters long. It was taller than a one-story building. Such a huge mutated giant crocodile made everyone's expression change. This was the largest mutated creature they had seen so far. Obviously, this mutated giant crocodile should be a mutated giant crocodile king. It was covered with huge scales that were about half a meter in diameter. On its back, there was a triangular spine that was the size of a table. It was like a table-sized sharp blade that extended from its neck to the tip of its tail. On its head, there were dozens of thick barbs that were more than a meter long. This made its entire body look even more ferocious. It spread its 4 claws and ran quickly toward the hunting group. It was like a fast-moving hill. Rumble, rumble, because of its running, the ground kept shaking. Behind it, a cloud of dust rose like a sandstorm. Miss Ponytail saw this and quickly shouted, "Dodge!" Only then did everyone come back to their senses and hurriedly dodged to the sides. If they did not dodge, they would be trampled into meat paste by this mutated giant crocodile king. In the next moment, the mutated giant crocodile king ran past them. When the mutated giant crocodile king ran past, they could clearly feel the huge and terrifying aura on its body, and the smell of blood that assailed their nostrils. The remaining glass on the surrounding buildings fell to the ground as it ran past. This sent chills down everyone's spines. Its tail inadvertently swept across the corner of a residential building. Rumble, a large part of the corner of the building was actually swept away by its huge tail. The abandoned cars in the residential area were like toys under its huge claws. They were easily trampled into metal sheets. However, the mutated giant crocodile king's target was obviously not them. When it ran past these people, it did not pay attention to them at all. Instead, it turned a corner and ran straight toward the entrance of the residential area. Everyone understood what he meant. It was very obvious that it was running toward the mysterious expert. Then, could the mysterious expert defeat it? At the same time, at the entrance of the residential area, in the grass that was half the height of a person, Immortal was standing there in a carefree manner. However, in his heart he was also shocked by his own move. The power of this genetic martial art was actually so great. These people from the hunting group thought that what they saw was already very strong. However, only Immortal knew that the power of the axe blade was much stronger than what they had seen. After retrieving his genetic martial art, Immortal looked at the mutated giant crocodile king. His right arm had become 3 times thicker. His entire right arm was covered by black scales the size of a fingernail. His right hand had turned into a dragon claw. The sharp dragon claw flashed with a cold light under the last ray of the setting sun. He slowly raised his head. He looked at the mutated giant crocodile king that was running like 10,000 horses galloping. The mutated giant crocodile king was getting closer and closer to him. 300 meters, he did not move. 150 meters, he still did not move. 100 meters? He stood there calmly as if nothing had happened. facing the berserk mutated giant crocodile king. At this moment he looked like a lonely boat in front of a tsunami, or like a lonely lamp in front of a hurricane. Finally, when the mutated giant crocodile king was only 50 meters away from him, his eyes shone with a bright light. He jumped up. Chapter 31. When the mutated giant crocodile king was only 50 meters away from Immortal, he finally made his move. His eyes shone brightly. His body leaped up. Facing the mutated giant crocodile king that was pouncing over, he jumped up. His right claw swung diagonally from the top right to the bottom left. Swish, an invisible force shot out from the titan's dragon claw. The lone boat turned into Noah's Ark at this moment. The lone lantern burst out with dazzling light at this moment. The mutated giant crocodile king that had just pounced in front of Immortal was instantly torn into two halves. Immortal could clearly see that its pair of blood-red eyes were filled with fear and despair. Immortal sighed in his heart. There was no one who could fight. At the same time, after the invisible force killed the mutated giant crocodile king, it continued to extend outwards. If someone could see the invisible chi, they would see that it was 5 transparent chi in the shape of sharp claws. This invisible force in an instant crossed hundreds of meters. From the top right to the bottom left. It brazenly crossed. At this moment the air seemed to have been torn into a huge crack. After the invisible force passed through a residential building in the distance, a huge crack appeared from the top right to the bottom left. The next moment. Rumble. The 6-story residential building collapsed with a loud bang. Smoke and dust immediately spread out. Only a slanted shadow of the residential building was left standing in the smoke and dust. At this moment, the 3,000 hunters were all aghast. They did not see how the mysterious strong man made his move. Under the twilight, at the entrance of the residential area, a blurry figure suddenly jumped up and waved his arm. The next moment, the mutated giant crocodile king that was like a small mountain was cut into two halves. At the same time, a huge crack appeared on a residential building. Then it collapsed. What kind of terrifying strength was this? However, it was not over yet. After the collapse of this building, the building next to it also collapsed. It also collapsed with a loud bang. Then, the second building, the third building, the fourth building. More than 40 buildings in the residential area, as if they were infected, collapsed one after another. Suddenly, smoke and dust rolled in like a tsunami. In an instant, the entire residential area was submerged. After a long time, the last glimmer of light disappeared from the horizon. The moon rose slowly from the east. The smoke and dust finally dissipated. At this moment, under the moonlight, everyone saw that the neighborhood no longer existed. Only a large area of ruins remained. The only building that was still standing in the residential area was the residential building that had been cut down at an angle. Only half of it remained, standing obliquely under the cold moonlight. Seemed so lonely. It was only now that everyone understood. It turned out that the attack that had killed tens of thousands of zombies and over 300 mutated crocodiles had already destroyed all the residential buildings. However, because the speed was too fast, the incision was too smooth. Therefore, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about the building. After the first residential building collapsed, the rest of the residential buildings collapsed one after another. Thinking of this, everyone was once again filled with shock. You look at me, I look at you. Everyone could clearly see the shock on each other's faces and the disbelief in their eyes. One move to kill the giant crocodile king. A residential building behind the mutated giant crocodile king was directly cut off. They thought that this kind of combat power was already very abnormal. However, they didn't expect that the first move was the most abnormal. Not only did it kill tens of thousands of zombies and over 300 mutated giant crocodiles. Moreover, it even cut down more than 40 buildings in the district. This destructive power was simply beyond their understanding. Looking at the ruins under the moonlight, everyone felt as if they were hallucinating. All of this was so unreal. Such terrifying destructive power could only be seen in myths and legends. That mysterious strong man didn't seem to be a creature of this world at all. Such destructive power, only people like Gong who rammed into Mount Buzhou and Ho Yi who shot down the sun, were qualified to have it. Thinking of this, a word appeared in everyone's mind. God. God of heaven. Only God of heaven could have such terrifying destructive power. A moment later, everyone's eyes unconsciously returned to Sister Ponytail. At this time, Sister Ponytail also felt ashamed after the extreme shock. What kind of existence was this? One move to cut off more than 40 buildings. He was so powerful that it was simply unimaginable for her. And she actually pretended to be him for 5 whole years. It was simply stupid to the extreme. Audacious to the extreme. If that existence wanted to kill her, she was afraid that she would have died 800 times already. When she thought of this, she was overwhelmed with shame and fear. After the shock and excitement, Yang Kong was the first to stand up again. "Commander Ma, tell us." Sister Ponytail felt weak all over. Her hands and feet were cold. She could feel that everyone was looking at her as if they were looking at a notorious liar. For 5 years, these people's worship and trust in her suddenly disappeared. Only suspicion and anger were left. And at this time, that mysterious strong man might be watching her. Such a huge psychological pressure almost made her collapse. A moment later, she slowly raised her head. She whispered, I'm not the mysterious strong man at all." As soon as she said this, everyone's gazes turned from suspicion to anger, although they had already guessed this result just now. However, when they heard Regiment Commander Ma say it out loud, they were still furious. The scene was silent for a full 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, someone finally spoke. "You lied to us for 5 years. What? Why did you pretend to be the mysterious strong man?" A series of furious questions could be heard. For 5 years they trusted this person so much. But now they found out that this person had been lying to them. How could this not make them angry? Impeccable acting. If it weren't for the apocalypse, the Oscar award would have been in your bag. Sounds of mockery could be heard continuously. When Yang Kong saw this, the anger in his heart finally subsided a little. He secretly said in his heart, "Benefactor, it's been 5 years. The shameless person who pretended to be you has finally been exposed." Sister Ponytail lowered her head and said nothing. After a long time, she raised her head. Facing the angry questions of the people, facing the ridicule of the people, she felt much more relaxed. 5 years. She didn't want to pretend to be someone else. She wanted to be herself long ago. But the base chief didn't allow her to do so. But now she said what was in her heart. She suddenly felt relaxed. She calmly faced the questioning and ridicule of the people. This was the retribution for pretending to be the mysterious strong man. Then she raised her voice, said to everyone, "I'm sorry." After that she slowly turned around. In the moonlight she walked to the distance. Now she was too ashamed to go back to the base. She could already imagine that when she returned to the base, she would face everyone's ridicule and abuse. Moreover, if she returned to the base, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear too much ridicule and abuse. She would eventually tell her uncle. If these people knew that everything was instigated by her uncle, their base chief, what would they think? The people were easily led. If they knew all this, would they calm down and listen to her uncle's explanation? With her understanding of human nature, it was impossible in a short time. At that time she couldn't imagine what the angry people would do. However, her uncle was the pillar of the entire base. If her uncle fell, the consequences would be unimaginable. So, she could only bear all this by herself. Chapter 32. Under the moonlight, in the ruins of the residential building. After Big Sis Ponytail said, "I'm sorry" to everyone, she slowly turned around and left. The angry hunters were all stunned. Yang Kong was also slightly surprised. Guo Jutao, the first captain, took 2 steps forward. He said in a somewhat feminine voice, "Ma, Captain, where are you going?" Miss Ponytail didn't say anything. She didn't stay and slowly left. Seeing this, Guo Jutao turned around and looked at all the hunters. He said, "Although Captain Ma lied to us all these years, she has always been conscientious in the hunting group. Under her leadership, the hunting group cleared the zombies around the base. Although she was wrong, maybe she also had some difficulties." Hearing this, everyone was silent. Yang Kong also came forward at this time. He patted Guo Jutao on the shoulder. He said, "Don't worry, maybe she has a burden in her heart for the time being, so she went back alone. Maybe she will be fine after a while." Guo Jutao nodded. He said, "Now that Captain Ma is gone, you are the supreme commander here. Captain Yang, what should we do now?" Yang Kong looked at everyone and said, "Although the zombies here have been killed, I am afraid it is still too safe. So let's go back to the base first and talk about other things later." Hearing this, everyone nodded. After that, Yang Kong led more than 3,000 people. They left the ruins of the community. They walked on the road. Along the overgrown road, they walked quickly to the base 50 kilometers away. They didn't realize that they had forgotten about the 5 researchers and the 2 zombie farmers. This time, the 5th team of the hunting group specially sent 3 members to take care of the 5 researchers and the 2 zombie farmers. As a result, 2 of the team members had been killed by zombies before. The only one left was the short-haired woman. At this time, the short-haired woman was still in a coma because of the zombie poison. In addition to what had just happened, everyone was still immersed in shock. So for a while, no one thought of the 5 researchers and the 2 zombie farmers. At the same time, 2 kilometers away from the community, on the broken bridge with vines hanging down like a waterfall, a figure was standing under the moonlight. This figure had messy long hair. His clothes were tattered. There was a terrifying bloody hole in his chest. Inside the bloody hole, the heart had already shriveled up. It was like a piece of dried bacon. His grayish-white eyes were filled with a deep shock. In fact, a long time ago when he saw the zombie hunters hunting zombies, he had already started to plan. He planned to lure the hunting group here one day. Then they would lure out the mutated giant crocodiles from the dam and wipe out the entire hunting party. His plan went smoothly. The hunter group was indeed attracted. The mutated giant crocodile was indeed lured over. However, he had never expected that a mysterious expert would suddenly appear. One strike. Just one strike. Tens of thousands of his subordinates were instantly killed. Even the 300 mutated giant crocodiles were killed instantly. Furthermore, the entire residential area collapsed with a loud rumble. What frightened him the most was that he still hadn't seen that mysterious expert. He couldn't help but doubt himself. Could it be that humans were already this powerful? With such strength, would the mutated zombies still have room to survive? At the same time, he also remembered the night 5 years ago. At that time, he sent a few mutated zombies with dozens of zombies to sneak into the base through the sewers and infect the residential area. He was about to succeed. But suddenly, a mysterious expert appeared. At that time, the mysterious expert killed thousands of zombies with one strike. But it was far from being as abnormal as it was now. In these 5 years, the mysterious expert's growth rate was so terrifying. If he continued to succeed, wouldn't even the leader be his opponent? After a long time, he slowly came back to his senses. Fortunately, there was still the leader. He was the leader of these zombies. But above him, there was still the leader. The leader's strength was unfathomable. He had seen with his own eyes that the leader just roared and shook off thousands of mutated beasts that besieged him. He had also seen the leader stomp his foot and the entire stadium stands collapsed. That kind of strength should be enough to suppress this human expert. After all, that human expert needed to rely on weapons, while the zombie leader relied only on physical strength. It was clear at a glance who was strong and who was weak. It seemed that it was time to find the leader. Thinking of this, he turned around. However, the next moment, his body suddenly trembled. His gaze seemed to be trembling, because behind him, under the moonlight, a human was looking at him jokingly. There was a faint smile on his face. This made him feel that his soul instantly left his body. How could it be? When did this human appear behind him? He didn't even notice it. One must know that his hearing was far better than that of ordinary mutated zombies. He could hear any movement within a 5-kilometer radius. His sense of smell was also far better than that of ordinary mutated zombies. Within a 5-kilometer radius, no smell could escape his nose. But at this time, not only did he not hear the movement of this human, he also did not smell the scent of this human. At this moment, in the mind of this mutated zombie, a thought suddenly flashed. Mysterious expert. This was the mysterious expert that those humans were talking about. The one who killed tens of thousands of zombies with one move and killed more than 300 mutated giant crocodiles at the same time. He also split the mutated giant crocodile king in half with one move, and destroyed the existence of the entire community. Thinking of this, in the chest of this mutated zombie, the heart that had not moved for 10 years shriveled like bacon. It suddenly twitched. The next moment he suddenly jumped. He jumped down from the broken bridge. Facing this human, he could not summon the slightest thought of resistance. The only thing he could do was to escape. This broken bridge was located between 2 mountains more than 50 meters high. If he still had the slightest chance of escaping, he could only jump off the broken bridge. However, it turned out that he thought too much. He had just fallen more than 10 meters. An iron chain as thick as an arm suddenly chased down from above. It instantly wrapped around his chest. Then he felt a huge force tugging at him. The chain instantly tightened into his body. Gotcha. His body was actually torn into 2 by the chains. From the neck down, it had been broken into pieces, falling under the bridge. The other half, only the head was left. Fortunately, as a high-level mutated zombie, as long as his head did not explode, there was room for resurrection. However, it turned out that he thought too much again. When his head fell halfway, it suddenly floated up uncontrollably. At this moment, this zombie's mind was filled with despair. From zombies, mutated zombies, all the way to high-level mutated zombies. He walked step by step and experienced many cruel competitions. Only then did he have today's strength. But now he had lost his body. His head flew up uncontrollably. How could this not make him despair? Soon his head flew to the bridge. It just floated in front of the human out of thin air. Immortal had a faint smile on his face. Looking at this mutated zombie, he asked, "I'm a little curious. How did you control those mutated giant crocodiles?" The mutated zombie grinned. Hiss. His mouth tore open automatically and reached behind his ears. He revealed a mouthful of sharp teeth. It seemed that he wanted to roar out. But at this time he only had his head left, even his vocal cords were gone. Naturally he could not make a sound. Immortal smiled faintly. "You don't want to say?" "It doesn't matter, I'm just a little curious." The next moment his telekinesis moved. Boom! The mutated zombie's head suddenly burst into a cloud of blood mist. Under the moonlight, it looked like a small cluster of blood-red fireworks. The mutated zombie's last thought was, "I don't even have my fucking vocal cords, what can I say?" Chapter 33. After Immortal killed the mutated zombie, he felt a little tired. His legs were also a little weak. He understood that this should be because he had used too much of his energy to attack with his genetic weapon just now. The attack of his genetic weapon had flattened the entire residential area. Its power was not much weaker than a missile. It was normal for it to consume a lot of energy. Fortunately, he had recovery medicine. He casually took out a bottle and poured it into his mouth. Soon he felt that there seemed to be an endless stream of energy growing in every cell of his body. The feeling of tiredness was slightly relieved. However, one bottle of recovery medicine was clearly not enough to completely recover his physical strength. He poured another 4 bottles of recovery medicine into his mouth. Only then did he feel that his physical strength had completely recovered. He felt refreshed once again and became a spirited young man. Only then did he slowly walk towards the slope beside the dam. Beside the dam, Happy heard a shocking roar coming from the residential area. He had been on tenterhooks. He held the small bottle that Immortal gave him tightly in his hand. When he saw Immortal return, he finally let out a sigh of relief. He quickly walked towards Immortal to greet him. His eyes were fixed on Immortal. Immortal knew what she meant and said with a smile, "I'm fine." Happy was clearly relieved. Immortal said again, "I saw from afar that the hunter group had already returned. They forgot about us." A hint of panic flashed in Happy's eyes. Immortal comforted him, "But I saw that the zombies nearby have been cleared, so we are still very safe." Immortal nodded and smiled at Immortal. Even under the moonlight, he could see her pure smile. Every time he saw this smile, Immortal would feel much better. He asked, "Are you hungry?" Happy nodded. Immortal took out 2 steamed buns from his backpack. The two of them shared the food. Immortal naturally did not take out the water and food he had obtained from signing in. That was his secret. Even if he was facing Happy, he could not reveal it. After eating, the two of them found a place to sit down and rest. They waited for the researchers and the short-haired woman to wake up. Looking at these people who were still unconscious, Immortal thought of a problem. Just now, these people had breathed in the blood mist, which was why they fainted. Why didn't the members of the hunting group faint after inhaling the blood mist? No matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't think of a reason. Immortal shook his head, too lazy to think about it any further. What he was most afraid of was trouble. Since he couldn't figure it out, he decided to ignore it for now. Those people were unconscious for more than 5 hours. Immortal saw that it was already 12 o'clock in the office. They won't wake up yet. He gestured to Happy that he was going to the toilet. Then they turned a corner. Then he strode toward the ruins of the residential area. Soon they arrived at the ruins. The voice in his mind said, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly once again, "Sign in successful." Sign in location, residential ruins. Sign in reward, 1 ancient map. Map. It was Immortal's first time signing out a map. Also, what did the ruins of the residential area have to do with the map? He immediately took out the map with his mind. The map was irregular in shape and soft in texture. It should be the skin of some kind of animal. He turned on the solar flashlight that he had obtained from signing in and looked at the map. The map should be the map of ancient Wuxia. The mountains, rivers, and cities were marked in great detail in traditional calligraphy. In the upper left corner of the map, there was a triangular symbol that marked the location. Beside it were 4 words written in calligraphy: Dragon Ruins? Dragon Ruins? Emo frowned slightly. He waited for the system to explain. However, the system didn't respond. Emo could only guess based on the sign-in location. The ancient words were more condensed. The Dragon Ruins marked on the map should be referring to the Dragon's Cave ruins. Could it be that dragons had really appeared on Earth before? The system gave him this map probably to ask him to go to the Dragon's Cave ruins. He might be able to find something good there. Even if he couldn't find anything good, he would definitely be able to obtain huge benefits by signing in at the Dragon's Cave ruins. However, Emo glanced at the location on the map. He saw that the location of the Dragon Ruins was not far from the place where the virus first broke out. When the virus broke out, there were no preventive measures there. Presumably, that place had now become the nest of zombies and mutated beasts. Even if he had the strength to destroy 40 buildings in one move, he would probably be sending himself to death if he wanted to barge in there. Moreover, the all-out attack of genetic martial arts consumed too much of his body. He wouldn't be able to hold on for more than a few minutes. Therefore, it was better to hide in the base and sign in slowly. When his strength was above everything in this world, he would go there to take a look. Thinking of this, Emo put away the map. He threw it into the system backpack. This time, when he returned to the dam, those people finally woke up. The short-haired woman shook her head and kept patting the back of her head with her hand. Then she looked at the others who had just woken up and asked, "Are you guys okay?" Everyone shook their heads. She stood up and looked around vigilantly. A moment later, she saw the mutated giant crocodile corpses lying around the dam not far away. She couldn't help but reveal a look of shock. This is a mutated giant crocodile? Those researchers were also shocked when they saw these mutated giant crocodile corpses. Over the years, they had dissected many mutated beast corpses in the research lab. But it was the first time they had seen such a huge mutated beast like the mutated giant crocodile. After carefully observing, the short-haired woman said, "The scales of these mutated giant crocodiles are very thick. I'm afraid even bullets can't penetrate them. To be able to kill so many mutated giant crocodiles, I wonder who did it." A researcher said, "Maybe it's Deputy Commander Yang. He's now a level 7 zombie hunter." The short-haired woman nodded in agreement. If there was anyone who could do this, it would probably only be a level 7 zombie hunter. Then the short-haired woman checked the surroundings again. Seeing that there was no danger, she was slightly relieved. "Where's the zombie hunter group?" she suddenly asked. Emo said, "I just woke up and looked around. They seem to have forgotten about us. They've long disappeared." F***CK. The short-haired woman was surprised. "Are you kidding me? There are so many of us and they forgot about us? I don't believe it." Then she jumped onto the road and looked around. But she found nothing. After returning, she said with a solemn expression, "F***CK, those damn guys, they really forgot about us. But don't worry, I'll take you back now." With that, she pulled out 2 knives. "Follow me." They left the dam and got on the road, slowly moving forward. Chapter 34. When Emo and the others followed the short-haired woman out of the dam and onto the road, under the broken bridge, in the pile of rocks, a heart that was as shriveled as bacon was lying there quietly. A moment later, in the sky, a mutated owl with a wingspan of 4 meters was silently flying over the broken bridge. It was looking for food. It saw the mutated giant crocodile carcasses. But obviously, it had no appetite for the mutated beast carcasses. It continued to fly forward. At a certain moment, suddenly its eyes lit up. Then it circled down. Finally, it landed in the pile of rocks under the broken bridge. In the pile of rocks, there were a few pieces of broken body parts scattered. But its gaze did not pay attention to these pieces of flesh. Instead, it stared at the shriveled heart that was as shriveled as bacon. Then it opened its mouth and pecked at the heart. However, at this moment a sudden change occurred. On the heart, more than 10 tentacles that looked like blood vessels instantly extended. These tentacles attached to the mutated owl's body. It was as if more than 10 iron wires were tightly wrapped around the owl. In the owl's eyes there was a look of horror. It hurriedly flapped its wings trying to escape. But it was too late. After those tentacles wrapped around the owl, they continued to tighten. They actually strangled into the owl's body. A moment later, the entire shriveled heart was attached to the owl's body. Finally, it merged into the mutated owl's body. Then, the mutated owl's body began to change continuously. The feathers on its body fell one after another. The flesh on its wings also slowly fell. The wing bones quickly extended. At the top of the wing bones, a pair of claws with sharp hooks grew. In the end, its wings actually turned into a pair of bat-like wings. Its eyes had also turned blood red. Then it opened its mouth and let out a hoarse hiss. Hiss! With a flap of its wings, it quickly soared into the sky and flew towards the northwest. A moment later, it disappeared into the horizon. At the same time in the base chief's office. The base chief looked at Yang Kong in front of him with a smile and asked, "Why are you the one reporting? Where's Commander Ma?" Yang Kong replied, "Commander Ma, she has been exposed." The base chief's smile faded slightly and asked, "What do you mean?" Yang Kong said, "She isn't the mysterious expert from back then." The base chief shook his head. "She's so strong. If she's not the mysterious expert, who is?" Yang Kong said, "Chief, it's like this." He immediately recounted what had happened in the residential area by the dam. The base chief pondered for a moment. He shook his head and sighed. "I didn't expect her to lie to us for 5 years. However, in the past 5 years as the regiment commander, she has been cautious and conscientious and has done many things. So we still have to forgive him." It was just that the people had just found out about this and their emotions were not stable. "So, don't go out for the time being and help persuade the people." Yang Kong nodded. "That's what I meant too." The base chief then turned his attention to the strength of the mysterious expert. His eyes were filled with shock. He imagined everything that had happened in the residential area by the dam. The base chief's face was also filled with undisguised shock. The mysterious expert's strength is much stronger than it was 5 years ago. Yang Kong nodded. Yes. As he spoke, Yang Kang's face also showed a yearning look. That kind of strength had already exceeded their understanding. He really couldn't understand how a human body could erupt with such powerful strength. He was now a level 7 zombie hunter, the strongest in the base. But his strength was far inferior to the mysterious expert from 5 years ago. Not to mention the mysterious expert today. That was an existence that he would never be able to reach. After a while, the base chief sighed. He said, "I don't know how the mysterious expert got such powerful strength. If he can share his method, maybe all the zombie hunters can be as powerful as him." Yang Kong shook his head and said, "Chief, I don't think so. Everyone has their own secrets. If we have to reveal this secret and anger the mysterious expert, I'm afraid." Yang Kang's family was saved by the mysterious expert. At this time he naturally had to protect the mysterious expert. The base chief waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just sighing. It's the luck of everyone in our base to have him protect us. Go back and rest. We'll celebrate tomorrow." "Yes, Chief." The next morning, 7 o'clock. The east had just started to light up. Immortal and the others finally returned to the base. When Immortal and Happy returned to the zombie farm, Old Lee was wiping his tears. It turned out that the zombie hunters had returned last night, but Immortal and Happy were not there. Old Lee thought that they had all died outside the base. At that time he shed a lot of tears. After feeding the pigs this morning, when he thought of this, he couldn't help but cry again. At this time, when he saw Immortal and Happy return, he was so happy that tears flowed again. Immortal and Happy looked at each other and felt warm in their hearts. Immortal stroked Old Lee's slightly hunched back and comforted him. At noon, the zombie hunters held a celebration party. At the celebration party, the short-haired girl received a commendation. Alone, she escorted the 5 researchers and 2 corpse rearers back to the base after a night's rest. This was obviously an amazing thing. The short-haired girl was naturally proud. In the 5 brigades, everyone despised her for being young and impulsive. She had always been criticized. Today she could finally hold her head high. Immortal only smiled at this and didn't say anything. In the next few days, the people found out that Captain Ma wasn't the mysterious powerhouse. They suddenly felt that their feelings had been greatly deceived. They had been deceived by that woman for 5 years. This made them very angry. Damn it, we were deceived by that woman for 5 years. How shameless. She actually took the mysterious powerhouse's credit for 5 years. I was also blind. I've always admired him before. Let's find him and clear the mysterious powerhouse's name. She's insulting the mysterious powerhouse. Emo was speechless when he heard these discussions. These people sounded as if he had been defiled by Miss Ponytail. However, he didn't care about this. Every day he just quietly signed in. At the same time, he would occasionally take out the map and look at the dragon ruins on the map. A few days later, the people in the base realized that Miss Ponytail hadn't returned since that day. Everyone's anger slowly subsided. In their opinion, Miss Ponytail's exile was a wise choice. The chief of the base secretly sent people to search for her many times, but to no avail. He could only secretly feel sad. Only he knew why his niece left. She did it to protect him, the chief of the base, and for the entire base. He knew, but he couldn't say it. Sometimes he regretted letting his niece pretend to be the mysterious powerhouse. However, he had to do it. Even now, he still insisted on this belief. He had to force the mysterious powerhouse out. Chapter 35. After the dam incident, nothing major happened in the next 3 years. Emo still raised pigs, fed zombies, and signed in every day. His days were rather pleasant. As a level 2 hunter, his strength improved very slowly. However, after 3 years of signing in, he had injected a lot of Titan Dragon gene enhancers. He had also increased by 1 level. He became a level 3 hunter. His telekinesis had also reached a new level. He became a level 6 psychokinesis. Now, he could use his telekinesis to explore a radius of 600 meters. He could control objects under 60 kilograms in the air. In other words, he could lift many humans with his telekinesis alone. In the past 3 years, all the hunters in the base had been training crazily. Last time at the dam, they had seen how terrifying the strength of a true powerhouse was. This became their motivation to become stronger. After 3 years of training, 7 of them had become level 10 hunters. However, after reaching level 10 they had reached their limit. Their strength could reach 5,499 kilograms at most. After that, no matter how they trained, they could not improve any further. They knew that they had reached their limit. However, what they did not understand was how the mysterious powerhouse broke through the limit. Since the mysterious powerhouse could break through the limit, they must be able to too. Therefore, they searched for various ways to break through the limit. However, without exception, all of them ended in failure. Emo didn't pay any attention to this. And one day after 3 years, the peace of the base was broken again. On this day, a few soldiers were patrolling on the city wall. They saw a figure slowly walking out from the empty area in the distance. At first, the soldiers thought that it was a zombie and planned to shoot it. However, through the scope, they saw that the person was carrying a composite bow on his back. There was also a short knife on his waist. The soldiers were extremely surprised. It's a human. After all, they had never seen a zombie with a weapon. That person had messy long hair that draped over his shoulders. His clothes were tattered. He slowly came to the city gate and shouted loudly, "Open the door!" The soldiers guarding the gate had never seen such a person and hesitated for a moment. They asked, "Who are you?" The man raised his head and stared at the soldiers on the city wall with his weathered eyes. His Adam's apple squirmed as he said, "An exile." What? The soldiers on the city wall were in disbelief. From the outbreak of Virus X until now, it has been more than 20 years. At that time, within a short span of half a year, Virus X had already swept across the world. Other than the 50 bases around the world, the rest of the world was filled with zombies and mutant beasts. Even if there were exiles, it was impossible for them to last for more than 20 years. The man's mouth was so dry that his skin was about to burst. He roared again, "Open the door." The soldier on the city wall pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. I have to report to the captain first." The exile seemed to be unable to suppress his anger. Suddenly he leaped. In the blink of an eye, he crossed 100 meters and arrived in front of the door. Then he threw a punch at the 5-meter-tall, 20-centimeter-thick metal gate. Bang! At this moment, the soldiers standing on the city walls felt as if the city walls were shaking. Then, rumble, the thick and heavy city gate collapsed inwards with a loud rumble. All the soldiers were shocked when they saw this. What kind of inhuman strength was this? Perhaps only that mysterious expert could do that. The exile knocked down the city gate with a single punch. He jumped into the city gate. Immediately, dozens of guns were aimed at him. The exile's lips cracked and his Adam's apple moved with difficulty. He said, "Give me water." The group of soldiers looked at each other one by one. A soldier said, "You came from the wild, you must be tested for the virus first." The exile's eyes were suddenly filled with anger. Then he suddenly jumped. In an instant he was 100 meters away. He grabbed the water bottle on a soldier's waist. He exerted force. Bang! He broke the water bottle's strap. He didn't even have time to unscrew the lid. He cut with his right hand. Bang! The metal water bottle's lid, together with the mouth, was cut off by his palm. Then he raised his head and brought the water bottle to his mouth. Gulp, gulp, gulp. He gulped down the water. The surrounding soldiers thought that he was going to attack and quickly raised their guns. But they saw that he was just drinking water and didn't have any intention to attack. The captain signaled everyone to not shoot first. The refugee poured a full pot of water and looked at another soldier. "Give me water." That soldier glanced at the captain. The captain nodded. The soldier took down the water bottle and threw it to the man. Only then did the exile open the bottle cap. He gulped it down. After drinking 2 bottles of water, he said to the captain, "Food." The captain frowned and said, "I can give you food, but you have to do a virus test first." The exile glared at the captain and threw away the water bottle. Then he jumped 100 meters in an instant. He headed towards the second line of defense. Seeing this, the captain hurriedly used the radio to report to the base. "There's an outsider. He's an exile. He didn't do a virus test." At the same time, the entire base's alarm had already sounded. Beep, beep, beep. At the same time, a hurried sound came from the base's loudspeaker. "There's a foreign exile who broke in. He didn't do a virus test. Everyone return to the room immediately. If you encounter that exile, you must not have any contact with him. Attention, he's very strong. He might be an existence that surpasses a level 10 zombie hunter." In the base, when people heard this voice, they immediately hurriedly hid in their own houses. In the zombie farm, Emo sure heard this voice. His mind moved slightly. It had been 13 years since he transmigrated. This was the first time he had heard of an exile. To be able to be an exile in the world outside the base where zombies and mutated beasts were rampant, he must not be a simple person. And he was actually an existence that surpassed a level 10 zombie hunter. Could he be a hunter? That was a bit interesting. Thinking of this, he used his telekinesis to cover a radius of 600 meters. At the same time, the exile strode towards Area A. After a moment, there was a slight pause. Seeing the 2 words cafeteria from afar, he immediately rushed over at full speed. The chefs in the cafeteria were currently closing the doors and windows and hiding in the cafeteria. However, after the exile arrived, he directly crashed into the reinforced cafeteria door with his body. Boom! The cafeteria door was immediately knocked down. The steel plate on the door was also deformed from the impact. Seeing this, the chefs all looked at each other. After the previous mutated zombie incident, all the doors and windows in the base were re-reinforced. And in a place like the cafeteria where many people could hide, the doors and windows were even installed with 2 centimeter thick steel plates. This person actually directly deformed the 2 centimeter thick steel plates. How hard did his body have to be? How strong was his strength? At this time, Emo sure was also slightly surprised. His telekinesis was just enough to explore the cafeteria. Feeling the scene that happened here, he nodded and said, "It seems that he is indeed a hunter." And judging from the person's speed, he could reach about 120 meters per second. He should be a level 2 hunter. Chapter 36. Emo sure found that the person was most likely a level 2 hunter, which made him very curious. With his experience, after reaching level 10 hunter, his body had been strengthened to the limit. If he didn't use the X2 virus enhancer to make his genes undergo a certain qualitative change, it would be impossible to become a hunter. He also signed into the system to get the X2 virus enhancer. How did this exile get it? After the exile broke into the cafeteria, he saw the steamed buns and porridge being prepared. His eyes immediately lit up. 1 steamed bun in each hand and stuffed it into his mouth. When he choked, he drank a few mouthfuls of porridge and continued to stuff the steamed buns. The chefs were all dumbfounded. How many days had he been starving for him to be able to eat like this? After a while, the leader of the hunting squad, Yang Kong, the deputy leader, Guiju Tao, and the others rushed over with dozens of hunters. They surrounded the cafeteria. Other hunters were still rushing over. The exile didn't finish eating until now. He let out a burp. Rubbing his belly, he walked out in satisfaction. Without waiting for the others to speak, he spoke first. "If you want to do a virus test, I'll do it." Half an hour later, the virus test results were out. It turned out that there was a virus in this person's body. However, the virus wasn't the X virus, but a mutated virus similar to the virus in mutated zombies. As soon as the results came out, everyone became nervous again. The exile was quarantined in the office of the corpse hunters in Area A. The exile was very cooperative and didn't resist. However, no matter who asked him, he didn't respond. More than an hour later, the base chief arrived. He entered the office and went straight to the point. "I'm the base chief, you can tell me anything." The exile finally spoke. "My name is Lu Wang, I'm from base C9. Hearing this, the chief looked this person up and down. After the virus outbreak, all over the world tried to build safe bases. In the end, 58 safe bases were successfully built. 10 bases were built in the country, numbered C1 to C10. In the first few years, the bases were still in contact. However, after more than 20 years, all kinds of communication facilities lost maintenance and basically couldn't operate. Therefore, the bases had lost contact with each other. He didn't expect to see someone from another base today. The base chief asked again, "Why did you come to base C1? Lu Wang replied, 3 months ago, base C9 was breached. Mo Shi frowned slightly when he heard this. The base chief also frowned. Base C9 was much more dangerous than base C1. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. How could it be breached? Lu Wang continued. A lot of powerful mutated zombies have appeared, and they have broken through the walls of the base. Fortunately, we have over 100 hunters in our base. We fought with those mutated zombies and finally killed them. However, we also suffered heavy losses. Of the hundreds of hunters, only 20 were left. The base was destroyed and there were countless casualties. In the end, only a little more than 1,000 people were left. They entered the underground emergency shelter. But the emergency shelter's resources are only enough for those 1,000 people for half a year. That's why the chief of the base sent 3 hunters to your base C1 for help. But on the way, the 2 hunters. At this point, Lu Wang's eyes trembled. No more words were spoken. The base chief was silent for a moment and asked, "The hunters you mentioned are stronger than the zombie hunters?" Lu Wang nodded. "Our base's laboratory research found that level 10 zombie hunters have reached their limit. At this time, as long as they are injected with the X2 virus, they can successfully break through the limit and become a hunter." The base chief heard this and a hint of joy appeared on his face. He said, "Lu Wang, our base can send people to go with you to pick up those 1,000 people." Lu Wang immediately said gratefully, "Thank you, chief." The base chief said, "But before that, you have to cooperate with our laboratory to produce the X2 virus evolution agent. This can also increase the success rate of saving people." Lu Wang nodded heavily, "Yes, I will cooperate. By the way, chief, the X2 virus evolution agent can only be used by people who have reached the body's limit with a strength of 5,499 kilograms. If you can't reach the body's limit, you will become a zombie after the injection." The base chief nodded. "You can discuss this with the researchers in the laboratory." Mo Shi heard this and understood. "I see." However, the fact that base C9 was breached was beyond his expectations. It seemed that the mutated zombies were getting stronger. He had to go to other places to check in. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible. In the following days, the base quickly developed the X2 virus evolution agent with the help of the exile Lu Wang. After the injection, the 7 level 10 zombie hunters successfully evolved into level 1 hunters. Compared to before, his strength had undergone an earth-shaking change. This made all the zombie hunters very excited. They had to step up their training and strive to become hunters as soon as possible. Mo Shi saw this and felt a sense of urgency in his heart. The mutated zombies were getting stronger and stronger, he couldn't just stay in the base and check in. According to his previous experience, the rewards for checking in outside the base were far better than inside the base. So that night, when it was late at night, he sneaked out of the base. With his current strength, it was not difficult to sneak out of the base without anyone noticing. Out of the base, he went straight to the abandoned city not far from the base. Although the zombies in this abandoned city had been cleared out before, it hadn't been cleared out for 3 years. However, they hadn't cleaned up the area for 3 years, and now some zombies had wandered into the area. However, these ordinary zombies were easily killed by Mo Shi, who controlled the stones. He killed more than 30 zombies in a row. He came to the abandoned hospital in the city. His psychic power covered a radius of 600 meters. He found that there was no danger. He opened his mouth and said, "System, sign in." Sign in successful. Sign in location, abandoned hospital. Sign in reward, Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer, enhanced version. Emosher's eyes lit up when he saw this reward. As his level increased, the effect of the previous gene enhancer had become very weak. Otherwise, he wouldn't have only leveled up once in 3 years. He didn't know how effective this enhanced version of the gene enhancer was. With a thought, he took out the enhanced version of the gene enhancer. He injected it into his left arm. A moment later, he felt the burning sensation in his body again. Emosher was delighted. He was very familiar with this feeling. This was the precursor to leveling up. Soon his body became hotter and hotter. It was so hot that his face and neck were burning. However, this feeling only lasted for 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, his body temperature quickly returned to normal, and his body seemed to be filled with strength again. Finally, I leveled up. Chapter 37. Finally, I've leveled up again. Emosher opened the attribute interface in his mind. Name, Emosher. Level 4 Hunter, Level 6 Psychokinesis. Goal, evolve into Titan Dragon. After advancing to Level 4 Hunter, his body was strengthened in all aspects. His strength increased by at least 10 times. His speed was also much faster, reaching 140 meters per second. Every level could condense a sky-killing dragon spear. Therefore, he could condense 4 sky-killing dragon spears in a short period of time. Emosher clenched his fists. The enhanced Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer was indeed powerful. Realizing this, he would sneak out of the base every night to sign in. Most of the time, he would sign in at the hospital. He would also often obtain the enhanced Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. But occasionally he would sign in at other places. Sign in successful. Sign in location, abandoned slaughterhouse. Sign in reward, enhanced bloodthirsty zombie slayer. Sign in successful. Sign in location, abandoned parking lot. Sign in reward, car driving skill max level. Sign in successful. Sign in location, abandoned farm. Sign in reward, summon mutated beasts, can summon all mutated beasts below level 5 within the range of psychokinesis. Another month later, 13 hunters had appeared in the base. The strength of the entire base had obviously increased greatly. And Emosher had injected more than 20 enhanced Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers through this month's sign-in. His strength had already reached level 5 hunter. On the second day after he became a level 5 hunter, the biggest crisis since the base was built arrived. On this day, on the city wall, a soldier was wiping the barrel of his gun. He inadvertently glanced into the distance. When he saw it, he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that in the wilderness forest in the distance, more than a dozen figures had already walked out. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be another exile? He quickly picked up the binoculars beside him and looked at those figures. When he took a look, he discovered that the dozen or so figures were almost completely unclothed. Some had broken arms and legs, and some even had their eyeballs drooping outside. Obviously, these were zombies. He immediately picked up the sniper rifle next to him, intending to shoot these zombies. However, at that moment he saw many more zombies walking out of the forest. 10, 20, 50. Then 100, 200, 500. Many soldiers also noticed the appearance of a large number of zombies. He hurriedly reported to the captain. When the captain came out to take a look, he saw thousands of zombies walking out of the forest. The captain's heart trembled. He hastily called out, "Prepare for battle." All the soldiers quickly reloaded and aimed at those zombies. However, they soon realized that they were powerless in front of zombies. That was because a large number of zombies had also walked out of the woods. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. And among these zombies, there were at least hundreds of mutated zombies. All the soldiers knew that the situation was serious. He quickly sounded the alarm. Soon the chief of the base learned about this. His expression froze. He hurriedly ordered the hunting group to prepare for the enemy. All the hunters rushed to the city wall as soon as they received the order. When they arrived at the top of the city wall, they were all shocked. They saw that there were already more than 100,000 zombies around the entire base. These zombies had actually surrounded the entire base in a circle. And there was still a steady stream of zombies coming from the surrounding woods. Seeing this, the chief of the base looked extremely solemn. With so many zombies, the leaders of these zombies had probably planned for a long time. And it was not just zombies. Around these zombies, there were also thousands of mutated beasts. There were mutated wild boars, mutated tigers, mutated mammoths. They were like a torrent rushing past, raising billowing smoke and dust. And most of them were mutated dogs. There were as many as tens of thousands of mutated dogs. Each of them was about 3 meters long. There was no skin on their bodies and their muscles with blood-red mucus were directly exposed. Their 4 canine teeth were as thick as the fangs of a wild boar. And these mutated dogs were extremely agile and fast. They quickly passed through all the zombies without touching any zombies. Lu Wang's expression changed greatly when he saw this. The scene in front of him was so familiar. A few months ago their C9 base had also experienced this scene. At first, everyone thought that they could hold on. But later, millions of zombies surrounded the city. Mutated beasts surrounded the city. Then in a short half an hour, the base was breached. More than 100,000 people died. Even if their base had hundreds of hunters, more than 5,000 zombie hunters, and more than 30 psychokinesis. In the end, the city was breached and people died. And now this C1 base only had 13 hunters, 13 psychokinesis, and more than 3,000 zombie hunters. They could not hold on at all. Thinking of this, his face could not help but show a trace of despair. However, what surprised him was these people guarding the city. Whether it was the zombie hunting group, the patrol team, or the zombie hunting team, there was no trace of despair on their faces. What was going on? Did they think that facing millions of zombies, tens of thousands of mutated zombies, and tens of thousands of mutated beasts? Could they hold on? Was it blind confidence? Or stupidity? Lu Wang could not figure it out. At this time on the city wall, Yang Kong was setting up the defense. His voice, through the loudspeaker, spread throughout the entire city wall. All soldiers, carry out the first round of shooting. All psychokinesis, carry out the second round of attack with telekinesis. If there are any that slip through the net, zombie hunters will kill them. Those 12 hunters, pay attention to protect the 12 psychokinesis. Don't let zombies and mutated beasts get close to them. His command was in perfect order. Lu Wang nodded secretly. Back then their C9 base lacked such a commander. However, with just this, they wanted to resist the attack of millions of zombies? This was simply a fantasy story. Thinking of this, he glanced at the soldiers, zombie hunters, and psychokinesis again. In the end, he still did not find a trace of despair on their faces. What was going on? Of course, he did not know that there was a mysterious powerhouse hidden in the base. He thought that his strength as a level 2 hunter was invincible in the base. But everyone knew that he was wrong. Ridiculously wrong. The strength of the mysterious powerhouse was far beyond a level 2 hunter. The mysterious powerhouse had saved the base from danger many times. This time he would definitely not stand by and watch. It was just that the mysterious powerhouse was unwilling to show himself. So now, people had a tacit understanding and did not mention the mysterious powerhouse. Therefore, Lu Wang had been in the base for 2 months, but he did not know that there was such a terrifying powerhouse hidden in the base. In fact, they were right. Of course, Mo sure would not stand by and do nothing. He saved the base many times, but not all for these people. Life in the base was so comfortable. If the base was gone, he would lose a place to sleep and check in peacefully. Therefore, at this time, Mo sure in the zombie farm was already wearing his color-changing camouflage uniform. Chapter 38. The cloudless sky was so blue that it made people feel happy. However, at this moment in base C1 no one could feel happy. Because opposite the blue sky was the million zombies under the sky. Millions of zombies surrounded the city. Tens of thousands of mutated beasts attacked. Smoke and dust billowed around the entire base. It covered the sky and shook the earth. In the distance, a female zombie in a pleated skirt was standing on a huge rock. She raised her head and stuck out her chest. Her figure was straight, like a female general. If one only looked at her front, she was definitely a beauty. However, there was a wrinkled, bloody hole behind her neck. One could see directly into her head from the back of her neck. Her gaze swept across the 10-meter-tall city wall. At a certain moment, she opened her mouth. Roar! As she roared, one could see directly behind her from her mouth. The million zombies heard this roar. Immediately they also roared. Hiss! Roar! Roar! The roar of a million zombies. The earth shook and the green mountains trembled. The next moment, a million zombies ran towards the city wall at the same time. Smoke and dust billowed. It was like a tsunami pouncing on the shore. Da-da-da, da-da-da, shio-shio-shio. On the city wall, all weapons fired at the same time. Bullets and cannonballs splashed towards these zombies. The zombies were blown away, shot through, and torn into pieces. In just a moment, thousands of zombies fell. However, there were too many zombies. The ones at the front fell, but the ones behind them rolled in. More than 30 minutes later. Around the city wall, more than 100,000 zombies had already fallen. However, after 30 minutes, the ammunition on the city wall was almost exhausted. The zombies began to approach. At this moment, the 12 psychokinesis began to work. More than 100 throwing knives quickly passed through the city wall within 100 meters. The zombies' heads were constantly pierced through. At this moment, those 3-meter-long mutated dogs appeared. They were agile and could dodge the throwing knives. And the mutated wild boars behind them were even more powerful. 1 or 2 throwing knives couldn't pierce their hard skin at all. Ding ding ding, only a string of flame flowers was left on their bodies. These mutated beasts rushed to the foot of the city wall in almost 10 seconds. At this moment, the 3,000 hunting groups. They all jumped down from the city wall and fought with the mutated dogs. In the distance, the sexy female zombie was waiting for this moment. She let out another roar from her throat. All the mutant dogs, mutant wild boars and mutant ferocious tigers charged towards the 3,000 hunters. Tens of thousands of mutated beasts attacked the 3,000 hunters. The hunters immediately fell into a disadvantageous position and retreated. There were still 13 hunters on the city wall. However, they had to protect the psychokinesis, so naturally they couldn't go down and fight. At this moment, Lu Wang's eyes were filled with anger. He jumped down. Half a year ago, zombies and mutant beasts had attacked Base C9 in the same way. Now, how could he just watch the previous tragedy happen again? A 5-meter-long mutated wild boar roared and pounced at him. He pulled out the 2 sabers from his waist with both hands. He shouted, "Die!" He suddenly jumped up and slashed the neck of the wild boar with the dagger in his right hand. Chi, the mutant wild boar that wasn't even afraid of rockets, had a bloody wound on its neck. Blood spurted out. He kicked another mutated tiger that was pouncing at him and kicked it more than 20 meters away. He knocked over more than 10 mutated dogs. In just a moment he had killed dozens of mutated beasts. Everyone on the city wall was surprised. Lu Wang's combat power was really strong. With his addition, the situation suddenly eased a lot. But it was just a relief. And the beautiful female zombie in the pleated skirt also discovered the strength of this human. She immediately pointed at this human and roared. Roar! In the next moment, the thousands of mutated zombies attacked Lu Wang together. Lu Wang saw this and moved his mind. His entire right arm suddenly changed. His right arm continued to extend, extending to a length of 200 meters. His entire right arm seemed to have become a 200-meter-long whip. The long whip was made up of hundreds of sharp triangular blades. His long whip lashed out violently. It drew a huge circle with a radius of 200 meters. Within this circle, all the zombies, mutated beasts and mutated zombies that couldn't dodge in time were cut in half. On the ground, a blood-red circle with a radius of 200 meters appeared with him as the center. Within this blood-red circle, there were thousands of zombies, over 100 mutated zombies, and over 100 mutated beasts lying on the ground. With one move, so many zombies and mutated beasts were cut in half. Everyone on the city wall was surprised when they saw this scene. This was Lu Wang's genetic martial art. And the zombie hunters who were fighting were all envious when they saw this scene. Genetic martial art was the most fundamental difference between a hunter and a zombie hunter. After becoming a hunter, they would have a genetic martial art. Their combat power would greatly increase. Not only would their damage increase, but their range of damage would also be greatly increased. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that a hunter could easily deal with 1,000 zombie hunters. However, although those zombies were cut in half, they didn't die. As long as their heads weren't heavily injured, even if they only had one head left, they could still continue to live. That sexy female zombie saw this and let out a roar from her throat. Hence, the number of zombies surrounding Lu Wang increased. At the same time, over 100 mutated giant elephants rushed towards the city gate. These mutated giant elephants were all over 20 meters long and 7 to 8 meters tall. As they ran, the earth trembled. Rumble, rumble. Although these mutated giant elephants were huge, their speed wasn't slow at all. They could actually reach a speed of 50 meters per second. One of the zombie hunters couldn't dodge in time and was sent flying over 30 meters. The other corpse hunter was directly trampled into a pile of meat. On the city wall, the leader of the zombie hunters, Xianxia, saw this. He gritted his teeth and jumped down. The giant sword in his hand suddenly slashed down. Gotcha! A mutated giant elephant's head was actually split in half. However, over 100 mutated giant elephants came rumbling from behind. Yang Kong could only take out his genetic martial art. His right arm turned into a blood-red spear. He suddenly stabbed forward. The spear was like a dragon. The spear actually grew to 100 meters in an instant. Puff 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 puff. As long as it was in the spear's path, regardless of whether it was a mutated zombie or a mutated beast, they were all pierced through. Yang Kang's spear shook slightly. Ka ka ka. Over 100 sharp blades appeared on the body of the spear. Those zombies and mutated beasts that were pierced through were instantly torn into pieces by the blades. Yang Kong waved his spear continuously. Those mutated giant elephants were also killed one after another. A hunter's genetic martial art was as strong as Han's, as terrifying as Han's. However, genetic martial arts were indeed powerful. However, the exhaustion on the body was extremely high. Yang Kong and Lu Wang's fighting style could at most last for over 10 minutes. After more than 10 minutes they would be exhausted. This was also the reason why Mo sure didn't use genetic martial arts much later on. Genetic martial arts were only used as a trump card. It couldn't be used as a conventional weapon. Mutated beasts and zombies were still attacking endlessly. They surrounded Yang Kong and Lu Wang. At the same time there were 5 giant elephants. They actually bypassed Yang Kong and Lu Wang and rushed towards the city gate. Their 2-meter-thick tusks relied on the forward momentum of 50 meters per second and fiercely crashed into the city gate. Rumble. Amidst the loud noise, the metal city gate that was over 30 centimeters thick shook violently. Rumble. The bricks beside the city gate exploded one after another. Seeing this, Yang Kong was shocked. If the city gate was broken, then everything would be over. Thinking of this, he hurriedly shouted, "All hunters attack!" Hence, all the hunters jumped down from the city and attacked those giant elephants. They used their genetic martial arts to kill these 5 giant elephants. However, they were quickly surrounded by other mutated beasts and zombies, unable to leave. At this time, another 5 mutated giant elephants bypassed all the hunters and hunters. For the 3rd time they crashed into the city gate. Rumble, the city wall trembled. Everyone was stunned. The next moment, rumble. The city gate collapsed. Seeing this, the 5 giant elephants immediately stretched out their blood-red trunks and howled towards the sky. Ayo! After that, they ran towards the city gate. Chapter 39. The city gate was broken. When millions of zombies were surrounding the city gate was broken through. What did this mean? Lu Wang, who was in the middle of the battle, heard this loud sound. He suddenly turned his head. When he saw that the city gate was broken through, a strong sense of despair surged in his heart. Their previous C9 base did not have a city wall, only a wall. 5 months ago, mutated zombies and mutated beasts swarmed forward. Their wall could not stop them at all and was broken through in minutes. This C1 base had a city wall. He thought that it could last for dozens of minutes. However, he did not expect that the city gate would be broken through in such a short period of time. He could imagine that he would see thousands of zombies and mutated beasts pouring into the base. Thousands of people would die tragically. The scene of C9 base 5 months ago would happen again in C1 base. However, when Lu Wang's gaze swept past Yang Kong, he realized that there was still no despair on Yang Kang's face. Not far away, everyone in the hunting group still did not have any despair on their faces. Even the ordinary soldiers on the city wall did not have any despair on their faces. What was going on? The city had been broken through, but they were not worried at all? Did they not know what they would face next? Or did they already have the determination to die, so they did not despair and only fought? Lu Wang really could not figure it out. In fact, the others were also a little nervous at this moment. Although they knew that there was a mysterious expert behind them. But seeing that the city gate had been broken through, they could not help but feel a little flustered. And although they knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, but millions of zombies, tens of thousands of mutated beasts, and tens of thousands of mutated zombies attacked the city together. Could the mysterious expert block them? However, they were only worried. They were still far from despair. At this moment, the 5 giant elephants had knocked down the city gate. They stretched their trunks and howled at the sky. Ayo! Then they all moved together. They took a step forward and ran towards the city wall. Rumble! Rumble! They were like 5 high-speed road rollers. They raised smoke and dust along the way. They instantly ran into the city gate. Everyone's heart sank. However, in the next moment, bang, accompanied by a loud sound, the 5 giant elephants that had just run into the city gate suddenly shot out. It was backward. Instead of flying backwards, they were like 5 arrows that had been shot. They stuck close to the ground and shot out of the city wall in a radial shape. All the zombies, mutant zombies and mutant beasts along the way. They were all sent flying in all directions by the 5 giant elephants. Even some mutated zombies were sent flying more than 20 meters high. These 5 giant elephants were shot a full 100 meters away, looking from the top of the city. Among the densely packed zombies, mutant beasts and mutant zombies, the 5 giant elephants created 5 bloody paths that were more than 30 meters wide and 100 meters long. They were like the 5 huge ribs of a huge fan. Everyone's heart, which had just calmed down, rejoiced. They all looked at the city gate excitedly. Their eyes flashed with excitement. A mysterious expert. It had finally appeared. In the monitoring room, the chief of the base saw this scene through the surveillance screen. His eyes narrowed. His eyes were fixed on the city gate. Yang Kong, who was fighting, saw this scene. His eyes were filled with adoration. When Lu Wang saw this, his eyes were filled with shock. He could also kick a mutated giant elephant away with one kick. But at most, he could only kick a giant elephant 20 to 30 meters away. Now, 5 giant elephants were sent flying 100 meters away with one move. Could it be that there was an even stronger expert in the city? An expert stronger than him, a level 2 hunter? Impossible. When he came to the city 2 months ago, they didn't even have a hunter. How could such a powerful existence suddenly appear? Thinking of this, his eyes were fixed on the city gate. Outside the city wall, on a huge rock in the distance, the female zombie in the pleated skirt flashed back slightly. Bang! A mutated zombie fell from the sky. It smashed into the place where she was just standing. Its head was smashed into pieces. A trace of surprise appeared in the female zombie's gray-white eyes. How could there be such a powerful human? She couldn't help but look at the city gate. In the next moment, she saw a figure slowly walking out from the city gate. She wanted to see this figure clearly. But this figure seemed to have merged with the city wall behind him. His skin color was the same color as the city wall. His clothes were the same color as the city wall. It was impossible to see clearly. At the same time, the soldiers, hunters, and psychokinesis near the city wall wanted to see the mysterious expert clearly. However, the mysterious expert seemed to have some ability similar to a chameleon. Moreover, around the mysterious expert, pieces of gravel began to float quickly. They flew around him at an extremely fast speed. His face couldn't be seen clearly at all. Only a blurry figure could be seen through the flying stones. However, even this blurry figure gradually couldn't be seen clearly, because there were more and more gravel around the figure. Gravel as small as a walnut, stones as large as dozens of kilograms. They all floated up and spun around him rapidly. A moment later, a whirlwind sandstorm with a radius of about 600 meters was formed. And this whirlwind sandstorm was even more violent than an ordinary sandstorm. A normal sandstorm would blow up sand and soil. However, this whirlwind and sandstorm was blowing up rocks. There were even large stones of 50 to 60 kilograms. A radius of 600 meters, which was within a diameter of 1,200 meters. All the zombies were almost instantly torn to shreds by this whirlwind sandstorm. And outside the sandstorm, the zombies who had just touched the edge of the sandstorm were also torn to pieces. It could be clearly seen that a mutant dog had just pounced to the edge of the sandstorm. The front half of its body disappeared instantly. The back half of its body was thrown hundreds of meters away by the huge force. On the distant boulder, the female zombie in the pleated skirt was surprised when she saw this. Her grayish-white eyes flashed. Then she let out a roar. Suddenly, thousands of zombies, mutated and mutated beasts. They all rushed towards the sandstorm together. However, almost all the zombies, and mutated beasts were instantly torn to pieces by the rapidly spinning stones as soon as they rushed in. They turned into blood and splashed out. Except for the mutated mammoths and mutated wild boars with extremely strong defense, no zombies or mutated beasts could come out intact. Even the mutated mammoths and mutated wild boars were covered in wounds and on the verge of death after coming out. And the whirlwind sandstorm had already turned blood red after killing thousands of zombies and mutated beasts. A blood-red mutated sandstorm with a diameter of 1,200 meters. It spun under the city wall. Those more than 100 throwing knives of psychokinesis were involuntarily swept into the blood-red sandstorm. They subconsciously wanted to take it back. But their telekinesis was simply unable to compete with the powerful telekinesis in the blood-red sandstorm. Their telekinesis was like a lonely lamp. And that huge telekinesis was like a brilliant sun. Wherever the blood-red sandstorm passed, zombies, mutated beasts and mutated zombies were all cleaned up. On the ground there were broken limbs and broken bodies all over. Blood flowed like a river. A real river of blood flowed like a river. The blood mixed with the mud, forming a mud that looked like a mudslide. However, this mud was blood-red. On the city wall, those psychokinesis saw this scene and were extremely shocked. They all felt ashamed of their inferiority. They were also using telekinesis. Their throwing knives, compared to the whirlwind sandstorm of the mysterious strong man, were completely garbage. And Lu Wang was in a state of confusion. He couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.